IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Happy Friday, everybody. We are now one day closer to Notre Dame's annual Blue Gold game. We are now a day away from when Brian and I and Vince and Sean can go up and see a full practice for this team. But more importantly, we are one day closer to Notre Dame kicking off down in Miami on August 31st. I know it still feels like a while away, but I already can't believe it's already April 4th of this year. It feels like New Year's was just happening. It feels like the national championship was just here. But before we get to all that fun stuff, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday, which means it is the Friday free-for-all mailbag here at Irish Breakdown. And this is something that Brian and I talk about every week, but it's something that we love doing. It's an opportunity to give back to our avid listeners, and we get to discuss their topics, their questions, because you guys get to dictate what we talk about today. This isn't exclusive to the premium message board members. This is for anybody in the live chat and anybody that listens to our show on a regular basis. If this is your first mailbag, and for whatever reason, in order to get your question answered, so Brian and I know to kind of divvy it up from the other just normal comments in the comment section, either put a little MB before your question or comment, or you can put a mailbox emoji. That lets us know to set that question aside. If you want your question bumped up to the top, because we typically go for, we'll go for a while today. But you guys have such great questions. Word stuff to get to all of them. So if you want your question bumped up to the top, we'd also greatly appreciate a super chat, and we'll get that answered right away. But it is Friday. It's the end of the week. Brian, I know Angela comes home today, and so there's going to be a lot of fun things going on for everybody this weekend. Lauren and I have a fun weekend stuff planned because she doesn't have to work for like the first time in a weekend in quite some time. So I am excited for this weekend. But before we get there, we got the mailbag, man.
Well, and Saturday's also Anne's and I's 17th wedding anniversary. So I get to start my anniversary off watching a little Notre Dame football. Then we're going to kind of relax, have a good day, probably make some nice dinner. We're going to go out to dinner probably Sunday night to kind of celebrate it. But yeah, man, it's going to be a great weekend. Very, very, very much looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it. We already got 54 questions too, Trev, before we get started, man. So we better get rocking and rolling because we might be here a while. So we do have a super chat to start things off with. So we'll get started with my guy, Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler, very much for your super chat, my dude.
Thank you, Tyler. His question, if you could give one Hall of Fame athlete that never won a championship, who would it be and why, and vice versa?
I've got one for baseball, one for football. My one for baseball is Ken Griffey Jr. I wish Ken Griffey Jr. could have been a part of a World Series team. Like, he deserved a championship. He's, in my opinion, the greatest center fielder of my lifetime, and just a tremendous talent. And I've also had a chance to meet him a couple times, which has been pretty cool. And he's a really nice guy, just a really good dude. So he would be one in baseball. My football one is Champ Bailey. He's another one that I felt like it would have been great because I think Champ retired right before the Broncos won their Super Bowl, correct? Yeah, he retired in 2013, the year that they lost in the Super Bowl. And he was hurt that year. And then, of course, they won it, 2 years later in 2015. So, yeah, Champ Bailey be mine. He was such a tremendous player for the Broncos. Very underrated all-time cornerback. I mean, he's one of the 3 or 4 best corners I've ever seen. He's up there with Deion Sanders and guys like that. I mean, he was a tremendous, tremendous football player. So he would be one that I would look at and say he'd be my pick for football. I mean, for a long time, it was Terrell Davis. I mean, it was John Elway, so because he didn't get one for a long time, but obviously he got his last couple there at the end. So, yeah, he would be mine. And obviously you see my Broncos fandom coming into play, Trev. Like in the chat, Archer452 says Barry Sanders. That's a good one. Dan Marino is a good one that never won a Super Bowl. But as a Broncos fan, it's, yeah. Yeah,
understandable, man.
That would be mine. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a couple. Some of them are a little interesting because during, like, in the players that I got to watch when I was growing up, some of them are still like actively playing. Others, it was kind of the tail end of their careers when I was coming up watching sports. the couple that I can think of off the top of my head that I remember vividly watching play, I wish it would have been cool to see LaDainian Tomlinson win a Super Bowl just for how dominant that he was with the Chargers. He was kind of my first opportunity to watch a football game where like a running back is just so dominant that it was just, you always tune in to see what he does. You hold your breath every time he touches the ball because he could be taking it to the house. He could be jumping over the O and D line into the end zone, something that he kind of made a name for himself for. And so he's one of them for me. And then a basketball player off the top of my head would probably be Allen Iverson. To me, he kind of helped change the game a little bit, brought a little bit of the street ball aspect to basketball, like a lot of the players today that have really nice handles. I mean, one player, just to kind of throw this little nugget out there, Marcus Burton said that he's returning back to Notre Dame for his junior season, which is super exciting. But, you know, some of the moves that he does on court, all of that kind of starts to derive a little bit back from Allen Iverson because he brought a different aspect to that game that not a lot of people had seen before. So that would be another one of mine too, off the top of my head.
All right, let's get back to the top. No other super chat, so we can get things started off here.
IC05, what is your highest game in bowling? I bowl for college and was just curious about it. Happy Friday, Irish Breakdown. Thank you for the great content.
Trying to remember what it was. I think it was 266. I've talked about this before. I took a perfect game into the 10th frame and 6 opened in the 10th. Still just so disgusted with myself. I bowled as a kid and bowled until the 8th grade, like through middle school. I was on the all-city team in middle school and all that. And then I stopped when we moved to Virginia. I stopped bowling because, like in Virginia, like all my family members did duck pin bowling. I was like, "What the heck is duck pin bowling?" I wasn't down with that. I was like, this is like a grown-up version of the little bowling we do as kids with the little black ball. And it's like, this is a grown-up version of that. Hard pass. And then after Angie and I got married, we joined a bowling league for a year with my in-laws. And that was the only that I bowled that year. And that was when I had the 266. I was like, I'm not getting a 300. I haven't bowled in 15, 20 years. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm not going to bowl 300. Got 8th, got 9th, and then got to the 10th and looked up and I was like, holy crap, I could bowl a 300. And then I was like, didn't hit the head pin either time. Went 6 open. So yeah, that was a very very disappointing end to that performance, but that's the highest game. That's the highest performance I've never had a 300. That was the best I've ever done. So
I was put on this earth to do many things. Bowling, not one of them for me. Not one of them. It's on days where I get over like a 110 is a really good day on the lanes for me. Lauren loves to go, but her and I are very competitive with each other. And that is one of the things that she absolutely wrecks me in. And so
that's funny.
Yep. Bowling for me. I love going bowling. It's a lot of fun, but I mean, catch me with the bumpers up. I'll probably get close to 150, but
Please, Trevor, if we ever go bowling together for whatever reason, do not, I repeat, do not put bumpers up. I will lose all respect for you as a man. Just letting you know that right now. Bowl the 70. I would respect you more if you bowled a 70 than if you put bumpers up. I'm just going to say, man. I'm just going to say. Now, since we're talking about bowling, here's a quick question from Andrew Gilmore. Better bowling movie, The Big Lebowski or Kingpin? I don't know that I would call Big Lebowski a bowling movie. There was a lot of scenes shot in a bowling alley. I don't know that I'd call that a bowling movie. But if you were going to count it as a bowling movie, I would say I'd go Big Lebowski was the better movie. But Kingpin was more about bowling. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with that.
Yeah. So that's mine. But yeah, I think Big Lebowski was a good movie. I think it's a little overrated, to be honest with you. I enjoyed it, but it's like not a movie I rarely go back and watch again. And for me, it's not as quotable as it is for like some other people. I just I didn't like it as much. John Goodman's character was pretty funny. I like Jeff Bridges as an actor, just not necessarily like that role. Just I don't know. I didn't love that movie, which probably surprises a lot of people because I usually like movies like that. But yeah, got a 2-parter from Iden Benami.
Part 1, very interesting response from Joey McGuire when Kate asked him how he kept James Blanchard. His daughter cried for a day, I guess. Interesting to see that Texas Tech said to keep him. I feel bad for him. He's going to miss out on a natty.
Yeah, I kind of feel for him too, just because of the circumstances that kind of kept him there from some things that aren't out there. But yeah, I feel for him. Don't wish that on anybody. But look, he'll do well there, and he will miss out on a natty. At least he will, the Notre Dame natty. But he'll end up somewhere bigger than Texas Tech at some point in time.
Yeah,
I have no doubt about that. He's very good at what he does.
For sure. John A1, assume all defensive ends add at least one pass rush move with one counter move this offseason. That being the case, rank the top 4 producing Notre Dame edges and pressures, hits, and sacks.
If everybody's also healthy, Boubacar, Bryce. So 1 would be Boubacar, 2 would be Bryce Young, 3, I'm going to go Josh Burnham, and then 4, I'm going to go Junior Tilamaka. I just don't know if Jordan Pataho is going to be back in full strength enough to play enough snaps to do that. I just need to see it because his injury was a really bad one. If I knew he was going to be 100% healthy, he'd probably be in my top 4 in this one, and I'd take Junior out. Yeah. So that's why I don't have Jordan in. If he's healthy, then you put him in there.
Yeah, we have the same list. A close 5th for me. You can almost call it 4A, 4B. I'd put Logan Thomas in that conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah, Logan Thomas, you know what? Now you said Logan could be one because Logan's could be a guy that plays half the snaps of some other guys, but has the same volume of pressures because of the role he's going to have. That's a really good one, Trev. That's a really good one. I like that one.
Thanks, sir. Super chat from Drew Rainey. Every year we hear of a wide receiver that is going to change the dynamic of the Notre Dame offense. Unfortunately, they never pan out. This year, the must-get recruit is Caden Finley. Is he really that guy and a must-get?
I don't really agree with your premise. We say every year guys that could change the dynamic of the Notre Dame offense. I also think it's way too early to be acting as if like nobody on the current roster can be that guy. Like we're really going to just dismiss Jaden Greathouse after a sophomore year especially with what he did in the last 2 games of the year, the 2 biggest games of the year. He went for over 100 in both games. I don't really agree with that, to be honest with you. I don't like that take. I've made my opinion on Elijah Burris very well known, what kind of player I think he can be. So I think Caden Finley is a must get in this class. I think, is he really that kind of guy? Like I've said before, he's a lot like Jaden Greathouse. He's a little bit more faster and explosive than Jaden was at the same age. Jaden's bigger and stronger. They're both smart. They both know how to get open. They both have great ball skills. They're both tough kids. I mean, Caden Finley's not as big as Jaden. He's not as strong as Jaden. He's maybe 6'1.5", 6 foot, 195. Jaden was over 200 at the time. Close to about 6'1". Jaden's stronger, but you look at, I like watching highlights then game film. So just highlights give me a sense of a kid. You watch Caden Finley's highlight tape. I think it's like a second or third clip. It's like a couple clips of him blocking. That tells me something. He's a strong kid. They're very similar in style. I think Caden probably has a little bit more Z in his game, whereas Jaden was kind of a slot first, outside guy second. But yeah, I think they're both. I think he's absolutely a potential impact player that brings us just another one of those really talented players they got to bring to the table. There's a couple guys in the class that could be that. I think Mason James could be that kind of player. Love Mason James on film. Braden Robinson's a unique guy, Trev, because he's about 5'8". He's listed at 5'9". He doesn't look 5'9", but he's super dynamic. But I mean, he's a kid that had like 70 catches for over 1,000 yards in high school last year. I mean, so he was a volume guy. Can he be a volume guy in college? I don't think so. But I also would have told you that Tutu Atwell wasn't going to be a 70-plus catch, 1,000-plus yard, 12 touchdown guy at 5'8", $150 for Louisville back in, 21. So he's got an all-around game. The size may limit his volume potential, but his per snap production in college could be really special because he's a super dynamic player. I mean, so there's a couple guys in this class that have that type of ability. They just got to land them. That's going to be the big key. But and again, we're not that far removed from when Kevin Austin was a pretty darn good player, and when Javon McKinley was a pretty darn good player, and Chase Claypool was a 1,000-yard receiver. So the last few years have been disappointing, but let's not act like Notre Dame hasn't had a big-time receiver in the last 15 years. They've had plenty, which makes the last few-year run really disappointing. But, I'm not ready to write off the guys on the current roster yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I also, smaller aspect of this, but personal preference, I don't like putting that kind of pressure and that kind of weight on a kid that has yet to even set his commitment date of,
right,
hey, you could come in and completely change the landscape of our offense. It's like, well, one, to Brian's point, there's guys on the current roster that can do that. We spent a good amount of time yesterday talking about Cam Williams and what that means for him. And so, yeah, I'm with you, Brian. Super chat from Aiden Benami. First food question of the day. Mexican and Italian foods are the same dishes, but from different form. I love them both, but kind of funny when you think about it. Better luck next year, Izzo.
Sort of. I mean, there's a lot of tomato base in it, but it's I would say not. A lot of what looks like a tomato base in Mexican cuisine is not actually tomatoes. It's different type of things, but you have your bread base. So a lot of pasta in Italian cuisine, it's more tortilla type things. And in the Mexican cuisine, I don't know. I if we're doing a buy, so hold, I'd sell this. I think aesthetically, there's some similarities, a lot of rice, a lot of breads, meats, and orange looking, but I think that, they're very different. And also a lot of true Italian meals don't look anything like Mexican meals. Like if we're talking like real Italian, they don't look anything like Mexican meals. If you're talking about like Italian, like Olive Garden at a restaurant where it's like lasagna and manicotti and spaghetti, where there's always some sort of tomato sauce, but like there's a lot of Italian dishes, not like American Italian dishes like fettuccine Alfredo, which is not an Italian, it's Italian food, but it's not Italian. You know what I'm saying? That's like an American thing that was created here. But a lot of like real Italian dishes don't look anything like Mexican. And I would pronounce a couple of them if I knew how, but I've got the recipes for them because I always look up for like good Italian dishes that I can make for my wife who's Italian and loves Italian food. So very different seasonings, very different flavor profile. I think maybe aesthetically at a restaurant they look similar, but I don't think there's a lot in common with those two. Just my personal opinion.
No.
What do you think, Trev?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I guess for the fact that some of them have like red based things. I mean, a lot of Mexican food is like wrapped, like enchiladas, tamales, stuff like that, like tacos.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could make the argument that when you strip things down to its bare bones, like all food is the same. There's a meat, there's a grain.
What he's saying, I then followed up, and what he's saying is, I'm saying all Italian is the same stuff and all Mexican is the same stuff. Okay, that's a different way that I took it, but I still don't agree with that. Like at a restaurant, maybe. So like at a restaurant, you get like tacos, fajitas, burritos, chimichangas, and enchiladas. Okay, I understand that. At a restaurant, especially an Americanized restaurant, that may be true, but there's a lot of different type of dishes in Mexican that don't look like the thing you get at a restaurant. Same thing with Italian. I mean, there's a lot of different things that have noodles in it, but like they definitely don't look the same, and they're definitely not cooked the same. I mean, I for the first time ever had shrimp carbonara when we were on the cruise, and that's a very different dish from like spaghetti. Just because it has noodles in it doesn't mean it's the same dish. A very different flavor profile. You actually cook it with like egg. Like take an egg and put an egg in there. That's how you get the creaminess. Like I'm looking forward to making it. And again, I think when you look at restaurants, if you're talking about spaghetti and lasagna and manicotti, I mean, at a Italian restaurant, you're going to have everything kind of looks the same and is the same. But when you look at like an actual Italian dishes, very different type of thing. Very different type of thing. But that definitely puts a different look on it. So he's not comparing Mexican and Italian dishes. So that makes more sense. But I would argue that I'd say Mexican is a little bit closer to that than I would say Italian is. But I don't think either of them are that way. If you like look at a true Mexican cuisine, not just, an American Mexican restaurant.
Sure.
Yeah. Free for all Friday, man. Always get some good ones. Always get some good ones.
Peter Freibert, over under the defense having 20 interceptions before the playoffs.
Oh boy, that's a lot of picks. Well, here's kind of the interesting take on it, Trevor, is under. That's a lot of picks, man. I mean, Notre Dame had 19 last year in 16 games.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go under. And the other part of it too, as I was going to say, is you and I think, have both talked about how we think this defense is going to get more sacks this year.
Mm-hmm.
The more sacks you get, the fewer interceptions you're going to make. Yeah. Just because a lot of sacks come from pressures that don't quite hit home, and you'll still have some of that, but the more sacks you get, the less opportunity there is to force a turn. But 20 picks in the regular season is a lot.
A lot. Yeah, I'm taking the under as well.
I mean, they've had arguably the best pass defense in all of college football the last 2 years, and they've had the best safety in college football the last 2 years, and they went 19 and 16 in interceptions the last 2 years. And that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, you had 4 teams in all of college football last year, Trevor, that had over 20 or more interceptions. 2 of those teams played 16 games. The other 2 teams played 13, San Jose State and BYU. The highest amount in the country last year was 22. BYU and Texas tied for 22. Yeah.
I would take the over if it was 20 turnovers, like total, but 20 interceptions is a lot, Peter. Now, if they do it, whew.
This defense is going to be nasty. Yeah. There's no doubt. There was only 2 teams in college football in 2023 that had 20 or more picks. Liberty had 21. Oklahoma had 20. So there's only 2 teams in 2022. Illinois had 24. And Middle Tennessee had 20. Only 2 teams in 2021, and they both played 14 games. 2020, nobody had 20 games. There was only 2 in 2019. They both played 14 games. There was only 3 in 2018. 2 of them had 20. One of them had 21. So that's a lot of picks, bro. A lot of picks. And I hope that you're over. I hope that we are wrong with our under prediction. Really hope that we are wrong. That would be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. John A1, back-to-back Notre Dame defensive ends. Predict which guys will take the most snaps this season and why. Rank 1 through 3.
Oh, boy. I'm going to go Bryce Young 1, just because I think ultimately he's gonna be more. I think him and Josh Burnham split the field, like the big end type of the end position. I think they're kind of close in snaps. They'll both play a ton, but I think Bryce is going to get more third down snaps. I think he'll be part of the third down package, whether it's rushing off the edge or even sliding him inside on like third and long. And I think that's what will separate him. The question then is like the reason that, okay, well, what about the starting Viper is I think there's going to be a deeper rotation at Viper. And if I had to guess, I'd probably go Boubacar, if healthy, has the best chance to get the most snaps there. But you're going to have Boubacar playing. You're going to have Jordan Patelho playing there. You're going to have Logan Thomas playing it sometimes. You're going to have Junior Tuilamaka playing there sometimes. I also think there will be times when Boubacar plays on the opposite side. And so that's why I'll go. So I'll go Bryce, Boubacar, Burnham, triple Bs. That's what I'll do.
Yeah, you and I have the same list of players. The only ones that I'm going to switch is going to be Burnham and Boubacar, just because I just need to see him come back from injury, because I don't know what his workload is going to be like at the start of the season, which I think could impact it a little bit. Not by much. Yeah, I think we're talking about 3 guys here that – and I'm just throwing numbers out here. I don't know how accurate these would be, but, I mean, I think we're potentially talking about guys who could have, 410, 400, and 390 in terms of stats. I don't think it's going to be a big gap. But I definitely agree with what you're saying with the difference between Bryce and Josh. I think Young is going to play a little bit more on third down than what Burnham will.
The reason I'm not as concerned about Boubacar's injury is because it's the same injury that Mitchell Evans had, but a month earlier than what Mitchell's was. And Mitchell played in the first game of the year. Now, as we saw with Mitchell, he didn't quite get going until really October, which is exactly when For Boubacar, that's when the season starts. So, yeah, that's kind of what I thought on that.
Fair. Yeah. Super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler. What does Frank Reich need to do to become the full-time head coach at Stanford, and what do you think their record will be this season?
Trev, we kind of talked about this the other day. Let me pull up their schedule. Neither of us think that they're going to do very well this year. We don't think they're going to go winless. I think wasn't that the submission that we looked at?
The floor being 0 wins, the ceiling being 3.
3. I think that was I'd say the floor is a little closer to 2. The ceiling is 4. In my opinion, at Hawaii is a winnable, but they could also lose. At BYU is probably a loss. Home against BC, they can win. Maybe could also lose. At UVA could be a win, but could also be a loss. Home against San Jose State, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt they win that one. But what's Ken Niumatalolo is going to be going into what, year 2 or 3? 3 at San Jose State? Is this going to be year – let me look him up. Is this going to – I can't remember if he took a year off after he left Navy. Or if this past year was his this past year was his first at San Jose State. And they went 7-6. They lose some guys, have some good players coming back. Obviously, they lost their big-time receiver. And they had the same record they did the year before, so they'll be solid. But Stanford's capable of beating them. After that, gets a little bit tougher. At SMU, loss. Home against Florida State. I got to think that's a loss. At Miami's a loss. Pitt at home. Could go either way, but I don't feel great about them beating Pitt. At North Carolina is probably a loss. Home against Cal, it's a winnable game. Home against Notre Dame, blowout, they'll lose. So basically what he's got to do is he's got to basically get him to 500. I don't know, like going 5-7, is that enough to get a guy a job? Are you really setting the standard that low? And plus, they also mentioned he is the interim coach. So I think the premise is that he's not going to be a long-term fix here, but I think he's got to get him to a bowl game, or at least got to get him off to such a fast start that they announce him as the full-time guy early in the season. I got to think that something like that is true. But I think, if they match last year's record of 3-9, that's a wow, it's a decent coaching job.
Honestly,
that roster's bad.
Yep. If he gets Stanford to a bowl game somehow, I think that's we're going to give you a shot to be a full-time head coach. I think
pay him a lot of freaking money.
Yeah.
That's a bad it was a bad roster before they lost David Bailey and Emmett Mosley and Ashton Daniels and all those. It was a bad roster before they lost all those guys.
Oh yeah. But if he somehow finds a way, I believe that if he just ends their 3-9 streak, and if he does go a 5-7, I think he might be in consideration. Like if they start a formal interview process, I think that, he might sit down and talk with them because he's coming in with the premise of being the interim head coach. But I think anything short of getting them to a bowl game, I don't think they're just like, all right, here's the keys to the car. But I do think a 5-7 type of season, maybe a 4-8, depending on who you beat. Like if you knock off 2 big name teams with the roster that you have, maybe he gets thrown into the consideration, but I don't think they hand him the keys unless it's a bowl.
And that just says a lot for a team that just over 15 years ago literally had a legitimate argument to make as a national title contender.
Crazy.
11 years ago, they weren't a title contender in 2015, but they were absolutely a team that was a top 5 team because they had, like that. To me in 2015, that loss at the beginning of the season knocked them out. Like, you're not a title contender. And then when they lost the second game to Oregon, obviously they weren't in title contention, but they beat a top 10 Notre Dame team, and then they beat USC in the Pac-12 title game. It was a rematch game against USC. And blew out Iowa in the Rose Bowl, which made them a top 5 team. That was 2015. Think about that. 2015, they were a 12-2 Rose Bowl winning team that beat Notre Dame, who was really good that year, who beat USC twice to win the Pac-12, who blew out Iowa in the Rose Bowl, and their only late season in conference loss was against Oregon by 2, and that was an Oregon team that wasn't a great team that year, but was a very talented team. So yeah, it's crazy how far they've fallen, and so hard. And
Well, I remember, back in the day, when Notre Dame would play Stanford, it was kind of Notre Dame has to find a way to beat Stanford.
Yeah.
Got to beat Stanford. And now I see them on the schedule. I'm like, thank goodness.
They chalked that one up for
right,
you know what I mean?
Right. Like a big one too. Like not just they might win by 10. Like it's
Well, especially now that because like the worst thing that could have happened to Stanford again when the Marcus Freeman era was beating him his first year at home. Because I just don't see how you lose a game like that still gets thrown in your face to this day. How you ever overlook that team, I don't care how bad they are, because that 2022 Stanford team was terrible. Terrible. They hadn't beaten a Power 5 opponent in over a year. Their only win up to that point in time in the season was a win over Colgate. Like, that was such a bad win. And then the week after they beat Notre Dame, they beat Arizona State at home by a point and then lost their next 5 games.
Nice.
Like, you're just not going to overlook that football team.
Nope.
You're just not going to do it, in my opinion.
Nope. Aiden Benami, interesting that Tiki Hola has his Notre Dame official visit after his commitment date. Or is there nothing to see here? I believe there's 2 visits after.
Well, I mean, we saw Simeon Codwell commit to Ohio State the other day with 5 official visits scheduled. He just canceled the visits after he committed. So, look, he set the official visit dates before he decided he was ready to make his announcement. I will say this. I love where Notre Dame is at with Tiki Hola. He has not made a decision. And I'm not saying that like he hasn't made a decision. He genuinely hasn't made a decision. I do think it's Notre Dame and SMU or who he's considering. I feel great about where Notre Dame is, but he has not, in fact, made a decision. But all signs are pointing in a great, great direction. But I don't see him getting to officials, obviously. I don't see him making official visits other than to the team he commits to. So, but that happens all the time. I mean, you see guys all the time say, hey, I'm going to make a decision on this date, and then you've got 4 official visits scheduled after that. It's kind of part of the deal, and then you just don't make those visits. That's how it goes.
Fair enough.
Get down here from somebody we haven't got yet. Let's go, Coach Bent.
Coach Bent, 574, Notre Dame legacies and well-known examples like Iverson, who are the top 5 players from your time covering Notre Dame that desperately wanted to come to Notre Dame that Notre Dame passed on.
So I'm going to tell you this one from before my time when I wasn't really following recruiting because it was more like in the newspaper form, like Blue and Gold Illustrated back in the day when Lou Emoji and Tim Priester were running it back when it was good. Like you had, I'm trying to remember what year it was, but basically Javon Curse wanted to come to Notre Dame, and they didn't have room for him because they were taking some offense. I think it was Alex Mule or something like that. They were going to take another offensive lineman, so they turned down Javon Curse in the Lou Holt era. So even legends make mistakes. You know what I mean? So that's a pretty big one. Obviously, Iverson's one. Randy Moss is one. People forget about this, but a guy that was committed to Notre Dame in that same exact recruiting class that wanted to come to Notre Dame, he was committed to Notre Dame, was James Jackson, who ended up going to Miami and was a pretty good player from Miami. He finished 1,000 yards in his last year. I believe he got drafted in the 3rd round, but he was also committed to Notre Dame in that class and didn't make the grade. And so he went to Miami and was a pretty good back in Miami for a number of years. So, yeah, that's another one. Like that would have been a filthy little 1-2 punch for Notre Dame. And he would have been, I mean, that would have been around the same time as Autry Denson. So, I mean, that would have, let me pull up Autry Denson's stats. Yeah, him and Autry Denson would have basically played together for 3 years. Like that, and then he would have taken over in 99 and 2000 for Autry. So that would have that'd have been a fun little backfield to watch, with instead of Tony Fisher, who I love, Tony Fisher, that was Julius Jones's freshman year in 1999. You'd also had James Jackson in there, and then in 2000 you would have had James Jackson and Julius Jones again as a 1-2 punch. That'd have been a lot of fun. A lot of fun to watch. But he'd be another one. Trying to think of some others that definitely wanted to come to Notre Dame passed on. I mean, a lot of the ones that like Allen Iverson, they didn't necessarily pass on him. He had that incident that got him in trouble. Same with like Randy Moss. So they passed on him because of certain things like that. I'm trying to think of some others. I'd have to think about this one for a little bit, Coach. Besides the one I just mentioned, I'd have to think about that one for a little bit. Because I know there's been a couple times where it's like, you passed on that guy wanted. Oh, here's one. They didn't technically pass on him. They'd have taken him. But Notre Dame, Ezekiel Elliott told Notre Dame he wanted to play running back, and they're like, no, we think you're a DB. Yeah. Yep. Oh, here's a good one. A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon came to Notre Dame's Irish Invasion camp. Obviously, his grandfather was, for a long time, Notre Dame's all-time leading receiver, Tom Gatewood. A.J. Dillon, I watched A.J. Dillon race all the other running backs and smoked them, including a guy that Notre Dame took, C.J. Holmes. Deion Jackson was in that group. And Autry Denson, during that Irish Invasion, told A.J. Dillon, we have other priorities. I think you're more of a linebacker. Now, little backstory, that wasn't the entire staff's view. I was told that was Autry's view. When Mike Denbrock and some others that were involved in the recruitment found out that he said that, they tried to do damage control because they actually liked him at running back, and it was too late. And that's why he went to Michigan. But I remember being told that at the time, and I'm like, what? He told him what? Because you could watch that kid's high school film and be like, oh my gosh, could you imagine what was – hey, Trev, do you remember what A.J. Dillon's freshman year was in college? Do you remember what his freshman year was?
Not stat for stat, but I remember it was pretty decent.
2000. No, I mean what year it was.
Oh.
It was 2017. Means him and Josh Adams would have been running behind that Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, Alex Barrs offensive line, Sam Mustipher, Tommy Kramer, Robert Hainsey offensive line. Could you imagine that offensive line with Brandon Wimbush at running back? Are you kidding me? Could you imagine Notre Dame in 2018 playing Clemson with a 1-2 punch of A.J. Dillon and Dexter Williams? Are you serious? But the running backs coach at the time thought he was a linebacker. So you got to put A.J. Dillon in that top five.
Who did they bring in 2017 at running back instead?
C.J. Holmes. Is your answer who? Is your question who? Your response who? Yeah. Salty asked me, did Notre Dame pass on John Elway? I have no idea. Yeah. Now, just Archer, just so we're clear, I don't think that Notre Dame would have got Ezekiel. I don't know if Notre Dame would have got Ezekiel Elliott. He liked him, but I don't know if it was to the point where they were going to land him. But I just thought that one was a crazy one when I started thinking about that. But yeah, Notre Dame could have had A.J. Dillon and Josh Adams and Dexter Williams on that same backfield in 2017. Remember 2019 when Notre Dame didn't have much of a run game playing Georgia? In a game they lost by 6 points. Could you imagine if they had, Tony Jones and A.J. Dillon on that team? I'm just saying. Might have been pretty good. He's a pretty good player for Lime. Indy Milton fan, Luke Kuechly. That's another one, Luke Kuechly. So I actually was involved in this one, so I can actually share this one firsthand. So in 2009, there were 3 players that I was adamant Notre Dame needed to go after, to the point where I was like, told my boss at the time, you've got to tell Notre Dame to go after these 3 kids. One was Zach Martin. Notre Dame initially was not, they were recruiting Zach Martin, but they weren't going to take him. They were trying to wait and see what Michael Schofield was going to do. And then when it found out that he was leaning towards Michigan, that's when they made a run for Zach Martin. I also pushed that they needed to take Tyler Eifert that year, and they weren't going to take him. Now, they didn't take him because of me. They didn't take any of these guys because of me. It wasn't until Tyler came to their summer camp and dominated that Notre Dame was like, yeah, I guess we should go after Tyler Eifert. They weren't going to take him initially. And then the other one is Luke Kuechly. I loved Luke Kuechly's film at St. X. And they were, obviously they were recruiting Manti. And I was at him. I said, you've got to talk to them. They've got to take this kid. This kid desperately wants to go to Notre Dame. He would crawl to Notre Dame. And the answer I got back was, Tenuta doesn't think he runs well enough. They like Dan Fox better. Yep.
Took Dan Fox over Luke Kuechly?
Yep. Could you and they eventually got Manti. Could you imagine Manti and Luke Kuechly playing side by side for 3-4 years in college? Like I didn't know Luke Kuechly was going to be quite as good as he was, but I thought he was going to be a dude. Like a dude. I didn't think he was going to be one of the greatest ever to play the game. It's kind of like when I've talked about predicting LSU to be a playoff team because I thought Joe Burrow was going to be a lot better in the new offense. I absolutely believe that. I didn't know he was going to throw for 60-some touchdowns and 5,000 yards. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I didn't know that, but yeah. Can you believe that? That's enough. So I'd go Randy Moss, Allen Iverson, Javon Curse, AJ Dillon, and Luke Kuechly. How about that group of 5? That Notre Dame passed on for one reason or another. Yeah, thank you, CFB or ND Milton fan, for reminding me of that one. Yeah. Yeah, when my boss told me that, I was like, what? What? Okay. All right, whatevs. Yeah. Unbelievable.
I'm in
Good
a bad
times.
mood.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
It's all right. All right, here we go. Ballpeen Shillelagh. Given how successful the current recruiting seems to be going, how much better does the recruiting operation have the chance to be down the line given the influence of last year's playoff run?
I'll be honest with you, way better, because I don't know that the recruiting operation is what's working so well right now. Like, they're still getting their feet wet on the recruiting operation side. Outside of Carter, they're still all getting their feet wet right now. A lot of what's going on right now, and this should excite people. Obviously, I've talked a lot about what Carter Allman's doing, but like Mike Martin, Jordan Blake, those guys are still getting their feet wet. They're not the drivers of what's going on right now. It's the operation, people like Becca Seitz, Carter Allman, like the returners. Becca Seitz still having a big role in like the organization and the planning and all that, which is still really going well. Carter's doing a great job with the recruiting side. But what's really helped is the staff has really picked things up. Like Al Washington is doing a lot, is handling the D-line recruiting. Nick Sebastian's helping him out, but like Al Washington's crushing it. Max Bull is doing a lot of the linebacker recruiting. Mike Mickens is doing Mike Mickens things. Jawan Sider is crushing it at running back. You're starting to see, obviously Gino Gaduli has a big role in who they're going to go offer and things like that. So they're actually running very much like an old school recruiting operation right now. While Mike Martin and Jordan Blake, and I mean, these guys are new. How could they possibly sell Notre Dame as well as Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock and guys like that when they've been here a couple months or a month? That's not hammering them at all. It's just going to take them a little bit of time to get their feet wet, which should excite people when you consider how well things are going right now. And that's a chance to be a lot better, especially if Notre Dame keeps winning. Because like a big part of look, guys, like some of these D linemen that they're looking at, it's not that Al Washington is necessarily recruiting way harder than he did last year. It's more so players are a lot more receptive to the pitch now because they just watched how the season played. Like how can receivers be open Notre Dame right now because they look at what Mike Denbrock has done in his career with wide receivers. I mean, he's coached a couple guys named what was that cat at Notre Dame? He's a pretty decent player. Will Fuller. He also recruited Equanimity St. Brown and Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool and Javon. I mean, he recruited all those guys. He had this receiver at Cincinnati. I don't know what's his name, Alec Pierce. And then just a couple decent receivers at LSU. Trev, you might have heard of them. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, first-round picks. Have you ever heard of those guys,
Familiar.
And then a couple decent quarterbacks, Deshaun Kaiser, Everett Golson, Malik Zaire. What's that cat from LSU's name? Oh, yeah. Jaden Daniels, won what's that trophy that they give out? Heisman. That's right, the Heisman. Like, I'm being super salty and sarcastic right now, but you guys get the point that I make. So you have that vision, but the vision only gets sold so far. If you're coming off an 8-4 season, they don't give a rip what you did with Jaden Daniels. But when you say, look, dude, we went 14-2. we were better at Notre Dame than we were at LSU as a team. Now, once I get my offense rolling, and I got CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie and Steve Angeli, we got Blake Hebert, who's a top-ranked guy. We got Noah Grubb, Grubb's in the 2026 class. Like, we're rolling at quarterback. Why do you think they're getting, like, every big-time quarterback in the 2027 class is making his way to Notre Dame this spring for free? I mean, on their own dime. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's because the players are seeing the vision and look how much notoriety Riley Leonard got last season. Look how much publicity he got, and he didn't throw that much. So all that is working in their favor. Marcus Freeman is a hot name right now. He's the guy that a lot of kids want to play for. Those things are all working to their advantage, while the recruiting staff, Mike Martin and Jordan Blake and Myron Tungavalo-Mosa and all those guys are still very much getting their feet wet with this whole thing. So it's like, man, by the time we get to the summer, like once they've got a little bit of their feet wet a little bit more and they got a little bit more of a hold on how things work at Notre Dame, you start getting a little excited about it, man. So lot in the playoff run has a huge role in that. And the playoff run is the byproduct of the playoff run are things like how popular Marcus Freeman is. Marcus Freeman's not the hot name right now if Notre Dame drops a couple more games in the regular season. It just isn't. So, yeah, it's a big one, Trev.
Oh yeah, down the road they're gonna blow up for sure, more so than what they have already. So I'm excited to watch it. John A1, which Notre Dame quarterback has the highest floor for the 2025 season?
I want you to answer that one first.
Yeah.
I know who I think it is, but I'm curious if we have the same answer.
Oh yeah, the highest floor for me is Steve Angeli, if I'm being 100% honest, because I know what we're going to get from him. I know what we're going to see, and that to me is a differentiating factor. Ceiling and floor is a completely different conversation. One of the reasons why this quarterback battle is so intriguing is because it is a discussion of who has the highest floor versus who has the highest ceiling. We believe that Notre Dame should go with the highest ceiling guy, because this isn't a conversation of can Notre Dame make it back to the playoffs. But as of right now, what we've seen, the sample size, what we know Notre Dame's schedule is and what the supporting cast is with this, I think the highest floor guy is Steve Angeli, because CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie, for how high their ceilings are in meaningful minutes in a meaningful game, they're still an unknown commodity. And I'm not putting too much weight on Steve Angeli's bowl game start against Oregon State a couple years ago. I am putting a little bit of weight on what he did against Penn State. Small sample size. It was one series. That was by far the biggest moment that he had played in his Notre Dame career, and he was effective. And so that's who I'm going with, John, for the highest floor in 2025.
My pick is CJ Carr. I think the floor and the ceiling is greatest with CJ Carr. I think you could even make a case the ceiling is highest with Kenny Minchie. If Kenny Minchie's like, I'll give you a little nugget that I've heard so far from talking to a few people, that CJ has been very steady, but when Kenny's on, Kenny is really good, but Kenny's a little bit more hit or miss. I get what you're saying, and I think that what I'm about to say is definitely not the prevalent thought. I think most people, someone whose opinion I respect, other Notre Dame beat writers, a lot of people that cover the team would probably think I'm nuts for saying this, but I still think it's CJ Carr. We haven't seen him throw a single college pass. I get that. I understand that. Jameis Winston won a national championship a year after never throwing a single pass in high school or in college football, because when he won the title, they didn't have the red shirt rule like they have now. Michael Vick led Virginia Tech to a national championship without having played a snap. I mean, I get those guys are outliers, but my point is, I still think he's by far the most talented quarterback when you combine intangibles and tools. When I look at Steve, I don't think that we definitely know what we're going to get from Steve Angeli. And because we know what he can do in a bowl game where they've got a month to prepare against a depleted team. And he did great that game. I don't take anything away from him. That's a whole different animal to playing at Miami or playing Texas A&M or playing Georgia or even a Penn State game where you don't have time to think about the magnitude of the moment because the guy just went down. You got to run it. I've been in that situation before. My sophomore year of high school, our starting quarterback got hurt in a playoff game. And I was getting ready to go. I hadn't time to think about anything. I'm just like, okay, got to go do what I need to do. And so I've always said this, it's a different animal when you're the guy than it is when you're the guy off the bench. There's just no pressure on you in that situation. And you're not going to be able to consistently move the ball up and down on teams when you're just throwing check downs and slant routes. You're going to have to be able to throw the ball down the field, avoid sacks. I don't think that Steve Angeli gives them the highest floor. You could maybe argue he gives them the highest floor in the first couple games. I think that's even debatable, in my opinion. I think the highest floor guy is the guy who has the physical and mental tools to play the most consistently excellent football. And I believe that's CJ Carr. So that's who I think they have the highest floor. And then ceiling talk. Now, I say that I do think that Steve is number 2 on the floor and Kenny'd be 3. Ceiling-wise, we're going to have to debate between CJ and Kenny for that one. But I'd still probably lean towards CJ, but I think you can make a case for Kenny because of just he's such a powerful arm and his athleticism. But I actually still think it's CJ in that one. That's why I wanted you to go first, because I had a feeling we weren't going to be on the same page on that one.
No, I get where you're coming from. No, I understand that completely. So, Aiden Benami, is it just me, or let's pass on a quarterback from Mississippi or Louisiana? Just kidding, but PTSD.
One thing that you can never do as a coach is assume that all kids are the same. Just because this quarterback from this region did this doesn't mean that quarterback from that region is going to do this. Otherwise, why would you ever recruit another player from North Carolina after what happened with Will Shipley? So they should pass on all these North Carolina kids that they've recruited because of what happened with Will Shipley. No, I'm good. And, you go all the way back to the CJ Leak days with what happened with CJ Leak. So, Malachi Ziegler was a very, very different young man than Deuce Knight. Not better, not worse, just different. He's his own man, and he should be evaluated on his decisions, not one other guy. Now, there are certain things that I will say that certain states in a general rule are a lot harder for you to recruit, and you've got to be aware of that, but you don't completely abandon that state, and you don't completely pass on a kid that checks all your boxes just because of something that happened in the past. You got to say, look, maybe we are not going to put as much resources into Florida as we do Texas or California for reasons A, B, C, and D because of trends and history and what tends to be more prominent there. But you also don't just not recruit Dallas Golden because Florida's been a bad state for you. Because Dallas Golden's a different cat than most of those kids in Florida. And same thing with like Aiden Pouncey in this year's class. Do you not recruit Aiden Pouncey because Devin Moore decommitted and flipped on you, or because Ivan Taylor, who was a public school kid, Dallas is a private school kid because of what Ivan Taylor did? Or do you assume that Aiden Pouncey is his own man and his family's different and he's going to make whatever best decisions for him? That's kind of where I'm from on that one. Because I'm trying to think of the state, like people, you can't recruit Fresno because I'm like, yeah, I get that. But that's more of identifying a certain trends from a certain region over experiences, and I understand that. But I don't think one kid from Mississippi, because look, let's not also forget Notre Dame's had actually pretty good success in Louisiana. Jerry Tillery, Jaden Alsbury, Michael Young. If Notre Dame wanted Michael Young to stay, he'd have stayed. Logan Diggs transferred, but again, that's why, because he was buried on he's not buried. He was in a depth chart where he wasn't going to be the guy because they had somebody, that was probably a little bit better than him. So
sure.
Overall, they've done pretty well in that state. Lawrence Keys was from that state. Again, another guy that if they wanted to keep him, he'd have stayed. So, I care more about that trend than I do about Deuce Knight and what Deuce Knight did. So I'll pass on. And if they would have really pushed for Ricky Collins, I think they could have got him too. But they went a different direction.
Good deal.
All right. Let me get down here to here we go.
Wyatt Kerwin. Who would be your top 5 kick punt returners out of this group? Williams, Leonard Moore, Scrap Richardson, Dallas Golden, Jeremiah Love, Johnson, Jadarian Price, KK Smith, Teddy Rizak, Jaden Osbury, Kedron Young, Kennedy Urlacher.
Out of that group, there is no way on God's green earth then I'm going to allow Leonard Moore at 6'2" to return kicks, even though he was very good at it in high school. Because I do not want a 6'2" kid who's not used to having the ball in his hands returning punts where people are going to be submarining him. Don't want it. You have enough talent at the position to be okay with that. So let's go first kick returners. My top 5, and I'm just going to go in order in which you have listed them. I'm going to go Cam Williams, Dallas Golden, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, KK Smith. That'd be my 5 kick returners. My 5 punt returners would be Dallas Golden, KK Smith. Can I throw guys? I mean, out of this group, Scrap Richardson, Cam Williams, and Jeremiah Love. Did I say Jeremiah Love already? But yeah, I mean, there's some guys that aren't on this list that I would much rather see on the list than like Teddy Rizak and Jaden Osbury. I mean, where's Jordan Faison? Where's Jaden Greathouse? I mean, those are guys that I would much. Where's Mark Zachary if we're going to look at corners? You know, I would rather see guys like that back there than Teddy Rizak or Keedron Young or Kennedy Urlacher. Even Kennedy Urlacher, like you want him running down, hitting people that are catching the ball, not catching the ball.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's easier for me to pick the guys that I just wouldn't even want touching kicks anyways. So all for different reasons, none of them for the same. But I don't want Leonard Moore doing it. I don't want Jaden Osbury doing it. Teddy Rizak. I mean, I think Jadarian Price should be back returning kicks anyways, just because of what he did against USC in 2023. I think he should be back there for different reasons.
It's also more touches for him too, man. That's another way for him to use his playmaking ability. You're absolutely correct.
I might be an unpopular opinion with some. I don't want Jeremiah Love returning kicks. I mean, he's RB1.
Agree, but he's on the list, and I had
on this
5.
list. Sure,
I'd still rather have him than Teddy Rizak or Jaden. Osbury.
Yeah. No, absolutely, 100%. But if I had to choose from this list, Cam Williams should be one of them. Scrap, sure. Dallas Golden, absolutely. Jadarian Price for sure. KK Smith for sure. And you can use those interchangeably for kickoff or punt return, but I don't want Bronte Johnson doing it. I don't want Jaden Osbury doing it. Nah. Super chat from Drew Rainey. Thank you, Drew. I misspoke earlier about our wide receiver chat. What I truly meant, what wide receivers do you see being the difference makers to help improve our passing attack in 2025? Thank you for always offering real and honest opinions. Much respect.
Yeah, Drew, the first of all, the transfers are going to have to be important in 2025. Like you have to get you need your transfers to be what they're capable of being. And even if that just means you and I have talked about this, Trev. I don't need Malachi Fields to be anything different than he was last year or even the year before. I don't need Will Pauling to be anything different than what he was in 2023 when he was healthy. Now, if they're better than that, that's awesome. But if Malachi Fields simply catches, what did he have last year? Was it 55 passes? Let me pull up Malachi Fields' stats from the last couple of years. So this past year, Malachi had 55 catches for 808 yards and 5 touchdowns in 12 games. If all he has at the end of this regular season is 55 catches for 808 yards and 5 touchdowns, 14.7 yards per catch, if that's all he has, that is amazing production for this team. That's way better than what anybody did last year in a 16-game season. I don't need him to be more productive than he was at Virginia. Now, I think he can be because of better quarterback play, better run game to protect him, better talent around him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if that's all he does, I can live with that. If all Malachi Fields does in 14 games this year is 58 catches for 811 yards, 14 yards a catch, and 5 touchdowns, it's what he did in 2023, I am thrilled with that. Like, that is a huge upgrade to the receiving core. And then you look at Will Pauling, and if all Will Pauling does this year in 13 games is catch 74 passes for 837 yards and 6 touchdowns, if that's his numbers after the first round playoff game, that's incredibly productive. And if they both do that, then this receiving core is going to be excellent. Because I feel like we know what Jaden Greathouse is going to do to some degree this year. Like, look, I know the frustration with his numbers at times, but Trev, you and I, how many times did you and I talk after we got done breaking down the all-22? Like, dude, Jaden Greathouse should have got the ball more. Like, he was a lot more than the ball, than what his numbers would show. It wasn't like he was just struggling to get open all these games. Just they weren't looking his way. Riley just tended to be more of an outside-in thrower. That's kind of what he was comfortable with. Kind of what Jordan Faison can do when he's healthy. So, I mean, good health for him. Greathouse, just keep doing what you're doing. And then those other two guys keep. This is what makes me so much more confident in this receiving core, Drew, is because I don't need anyone to do something that they've never done before. I don't need anyone to play beyond their potential. Like, if Jaden Greathouse has the exact same season this year that he had last year, open on the same number of routes, gets the same number of snaps, I promise you his production at the end of the regular season will look a lot more like what his production was at the end of the entire season. Like, I'm confident in that, which is 42 catches for 592 yards, 4 touchdowns. I'll be shocked if he doesn't have that level of production at the end of 12 games this season if he's the same exact player he was last year. Same exact guy. Doesn't get an ounce better. He'll at least give you that production in the regular season because I think the offense is going to be different and because I think the quarterbacks who are going to be playing are guys who will look for him more. Why do I believe that? Because I watched them do that last spring. That's why. I watched them do it last spring. I watched them go out and perform and throw to him all the time, and Steve Angeli threw to him a lot. I saw Kenny Minchie throw to him a lot. I assume that C.J. Carr will have no problem doing that. So that's what kind of gets me excited, Drew, is that we don't need any of these guys to, like with Jordan Faison, is it, hey, Jordan, I need you to be better than you were last year? No, I just need you to be healthy. And that's what kind of gives you some level of excitement about what this group can be. So when you talk about what receivers need to be different makers to help improve the passing attack, Malachi Fields, do what you do. Jaden Greathouse, do what you do. Will Pauling, do what you do. Jordan Faison, do what you do. And you're going to be fine. Now, if anybody else on top of that steps up, then you're going to be even better. And that's what we talked about yesterday with, Cam Williams and the KK Smiths and Logan Saldate type of guys, is they bring an element maybe you don't have. And the same thing with Eli Raridan. All 22 film, Eli Raridan should have had 5 catches for about 75, 80 yards in the championship game against Ohio State. He was open a lot. Just ball didn't come his way. So that's really the thing for me. The biggest thing for me in improving the pass game this year is going to be more about quarterback play, pass protection. Because the guys that you and I had issues with last year on film, Trev, which we spoke about all year, was more of, Bo at times. It was how they used KK, which was frustrating. And he wasn't great at times. He didn't look like he was going full speed at times. Jordan Faison was banged up. And it was stuff like that. It wasn't – Mitchell Evans was a frustrating part of last season and how he performed. But pass protection was as big of an issue as anything. There were times the receivers played very well. At times they didn't. Northern Illinois, they played terrible. Jaden Greathouse, as good as he was all year, huge drop against Northern Illinois. But for the most part, the guys that were the best receivers last year are back, with the exception of Bo Collins, who you've basically traded for Malachi Fields. I can live with that. That's pretty good. It's a pretty good group. I think quarterback play is going to have the big difference, but you've got to protect the quarterback. Look, perfect example is the Purdue game. You've got Bo Collins wide open for what would be a touchdown. Riley Leonard can't get the ball to him. Why? Because the left tackle got launched into his lap when he was about to throw the football. There's another play that game where Jaden Harrison's about to come wide open for a big play, and Riley just doesn't see him, and he just doesn't see it, doesn't throw it. So stuff like that, where you're just like, first game of the year, first drive, Jeremiah Love's running a slot fade on a linebacker, and if Riley just gives like a little pump and go or just waits, throws the ball. He's about to run by that dude. I'll send you that clip after we're done here, Trev. Actually, you've got that video. So it's just stuff like that where Riley's lack of experience in the system just kept him from ever really getting comfortable to the point where he was able to execute it the way that you'd like to execute it. So I think quarterback is really going to be the big key. But at receiver, you just need guys to play to their potential on a more consistent basis and just statistically do what they've done in the past. That's really what it boils down to. Anything to add to that, Trev?
No, I break it down into like wide receiver specific. I break it down into 2 different categories. And for all the guys that you mentioned, you just need to be consistent, remain consistent. And then the second bucket that I have is you need other players to elevate, like we also talked about yesterday. Notre Dame is going to need more impact role players in the receiving room. And that could mean a bunch of different people. That could be Cam Williams, Logan Saldate, Micah Gilbert, KK Smith, Elijah Burris. So there's a bunch of different people who can step into that role. And that doesn't mean that players like Malachi and Will Pauling and Faison and Greathouse don't need to do anything to elevate their respective games. We're just saying baseline, if they do what they did last year, this is going to be a much different looking, much more effective passing attack. And then the third facet, and this could be said for every single position group, not just receivers, but just stay healthy.
There's actually a funny thing that's in response to Wyatt Kerwin's conversation. There's actually a really funny response to that. Somebody asked, Archer asked, has a linebacker ever been a primary punt returner? And my answer to that is yes. And that person is related to a player on the current team. Because in college, Brian Urlacher was the primary punt returner for New Mexico.
Was he actually?
Yeah. He was one of 2. They had 2 guys. He led them in punt returns that year. He had 10 punt returns for 158 yards. He had 4 kick returns for 79 yards. He was number 3 on their team in kick return yards, number 1 on the team in punt return yards. Yep. I think saying he was primary is probably not the right way of saying it. They would put him back there when they needed a play. And he had 10 punt returns that year for 158 yards. He was a freak athlete. Absolutely freaky athlete.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he was really good. He was really good. He also caught 7 passes for 61 yards that year. He was really good. He was really good.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah. He had 6 touchdowns that year. Because he had 7 catches for 61 yards. 6 of them went for touchdowns. So they just put him into the red zone and throw him the football. I remember the first time I watched his highlights, I was like, what? Who's this guy? Yeah. He was really good. Really, really good. He was not a safety in his last year. They basically kind of brought him down, and he basically ran as a linebacker. He started off as a safety in New Mexico. Yeah.
The more you know.
Yep. He was really, really good. All right. Let's get some more back up here from some of these top guys. Top of the line guys, not top guys, but order of in which we got it.
Aiden Benami, how much better was the defense's tackling compared to the year before? I feel like the open field tackling was much better. Many moments I can think of. Big time stops last year. Think that can continue?
It definitely got better last year, and I think it can definitely get better this year because I don't think tackling was great in the postseason. I especially think the last couple games, tackling wasn't as good. And the reason I think it can get better is just because you're going to have so many older players playing this year or more experienced players. You had a lot of young guys last year that were like Adon Schuler's not going to have some of the misses he had last year. I don't think that Drake Bowen and Jaden Ausberry are going to have the same kind of misses they had last year. So I just think overall you're going to have a more veteran team, and I think some of the changes that they're going to do schematically are going to help them be a little bit better tackling. So, yeah, I think, but they were definitely much better, and to Aiden's point, they were more clutch in those moments where they would make those tackles, and that certainly helped.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm with you. John A1. I think we already did this one. In 2024, Riley Leonard had 184 carries compared to 92 carries Hayden Moore had at Cincinnati, which was the lowest amount of quarterback carries under Den Brock as offensive coordinator. How many quarterback carries do you predict in 2025?
One thing to consider about that, by the way, is you have to look at also sacks. Cincinnati allowed 17 sacks that year. Most of those were for Hayden Moore. And so that has to factor into a little bit as well. So, and then a lot of those were scrambles. So I'm actually going to go back and look something up here, John, real quick, because I'm going to give you one of the things that I like about what Pro Football Focus does. As I've said before, their data collection is actually quite good. Their grading system is pretty terrible, but data collection, they're good. So I want to look up this stat because I want to know. I don't know the answer, so I'm looking this up. So Hayden Moore in 2017 had, let's see, of his, what was it? They had him down for 87 attempts is what they had him for at Pro Football Focus. And he was credited with 92. So 87 attempts. They had he had basically 15 zone, 29 gap, so quarterback runs, and then 19 scrambles. So you're talking about 19 scrambles plus would be 17 sacks. So let me just do some math here real quick, Trev. So that's 44 plus 19. So basically 40 some designed runs that year. It'd be probably close to that. Probably close. I don't think they're going to have a ton of like designed runs for the quarterback, but I would imagine that the quarterback is going to be somewhere in the 80 plus in regard to total carries over the course of an entire season, just because of scrambles. You're going to have quarterback sneaks. You're going to have, a couple read zones where they keep the ball. There's going to be a lot of different things like that happen. So I would imagine that. Like, what did Jack Cohn do in 2021? Jack Cohn had 57 quote unquote carries for minus 100 yards. So about 75, 80.
I also don't know. I'm pretty sure in college they track sacks. Like if you get sacked, I think they mark that as a carry.
It's count as a carry. Right. Yeah. That's what I said. Hayden Moore was sacked 17 times that year that he marked him down for 92 carries.
Yeah.
And then you had 19 scrambles and then some others that they didn't count as either zone or scheme. So my thought is going to be, now the one thing I am glad they got rid of is they don't count taking a knee against a quarterback anymore. That's now carried as a team. I still think it's dumb they count it as a rushing stat, but they count it as a team carry, and that's how they do that. So, yeah, but at least 75, 80 between all that stuff. You'll have at least 75, 80 for the starting quarterback.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Coach Bent 574. If you could get any sports-related question answered honestly, what would it be? For me, it would be about the first Jordan retirement.
That's interesting. If I could get any sports-related question answered, what would it be? Man, I'd have to think about that one for a second. Oh, boy. Trev, anything pop into your head? I mean, there's always things that you want to know, like who do you really believe is the greatest player to ever play a certain position or sport? Like I would love to get real opinions from people on who they thought was better between Magic and Larry. That would be an interesting one because that's the era I grew up in watching basketball. It was Magic and Larry. They were the two stars of the league in the 80s. But like that would be one. Like I know who I think it is, but I was a Celtics fan, so of course I think it's Larry. And every Lakers fan I know probably thinks it's Magic,
Yeah.
But that's an interesting one. Man, what would it be? I mean, I really can't think of anything Notre Dame related. If I could get one question answered, sports related question answered honestly. Yeah, I'm gonna go the lazy route. I'm just gonna say who did NBA players think was of the era think was better, Magic or Larry? That'd be one. But I'm sure there's more entertaining ones.
The only ones that are coming to my head are like just super controversial ones. Like I don't think it's a mystery that teams down south like paid players back in the day. I would just ask like who did you pay?
Yeah, like if Shane Gillis's question to Nick Saban happened after Nick Saban had just taken some truth serum, like what his response would have been. Yeah,
I would absolutely sit down and ask Alabama Jones who all they paid during his tenure.
Yeah.
Down in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. Yep. Somebody said, is wrestling real or fake? That's really funny.
That's funny.
That's really funny. Oh, my goodness. That's good stuff.
Tommy Guns, how do you think Jack Kaiser's snaps will be replaced?
I think that's a good question. So whoever wins the starting will job, in my opinion, will get, I think, 80% of Jack Kaiser snaps. I think that what you're going to see, Trev, is I think you're going to see more of Drake Bowen as the mic, and not quite as much rotating as we did last year. But like I still think Kingston will get some mic snaps, so he gets his volume. But so like last year, Jack led the team in 641 snaps. Jaden was at 438. Jaden Osborne was at 438. Kingston was at, Jaylen Sneed was at 433, and then Kingston was at 343. If you divide his snaps times the number of games he played and then give him 16 games, he's at 392. Probably would have played a little bit more than that because he did get hurt like during a game. So he got hurt against Army after 6 plays. So he, if you look at his average up to that point in time, actually, I'm gonna actually do something real quick. So if you look at what Kingston was averaging before the injury, so you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he was averaging 25.6 snaps per game times 16. Kingston was on pace for about 410 snaps that season. So I think what you're going to see is those guys were all within a certain number of snaps, 400 some snaps. I think what you're going to see is one of those guys, whoever starts, is going to be around 600, 550 to 600. And then the rest of those will be added to what those other guys are we're going to get from last year. So I think that's just going to happen. Instead of going with like a 5-man linebacker rotation this year, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a 4-man. Madden will play. I don't know that he'll play as much as maybe Kingston did last year, just because some of the other guys are a little bit like last year. Kingston was only a year behind Drake and Jaden, and only 2 years. Now this year he's kind of 2 years behind those guys and a year behind Kingston. So I think that'll factor in too. So he'll get some of those snaps, and like the other question, like I don't know what Bodie Cahoon's health situation is like right now. I mean, it sounds like he's doing really well. Max Bull had some very interesting comments about Bodie Cahoon and what he thinks of him athletically. Is he ready to step into some of those snaps? That's a remain to be seen situation. Does Preston Zenner earn any snaps? I don't know. But I think whoever starts that position will end up getting about 85. Let me see. What did I say Jack had, Trev? It was 650, 641.
Yeah.
So if he's at so if somebody's at 85% of his snaps, that's 545. It's about 550, like I said. So 85% of his snaps. And then the rest will be distributed to the other 2, plus some of them will go to Madden this year as well. That's what I think we'll see.
Yeah, not a whole lot of difference of opinion on my side. I don't know if the only other thing would be, I don't know if it'll be maybe over 500, but I mean, I think it'll be close. I really do, because I think with guys like Jaden Ausberry and Jaylen Sneed in Kingston, I think it might be a little bit more evenly distributed, but I don't know if they're going to have a true 5-man rotation like that. Whoever starts it will have more snaps. I think if it is going to be in between the 500 and 600 range, I think it'll be closer to 500 than it would be closer to 600. But I mean, we're talking the difference of a couple of snaps a game over the course of the season, so I don't see it being too different. Paul Hamilton, what are your thoughts about Eli Manning as a player? Is he a Hall of Famer to you?
Let me pull up his numbers, because I've always kind of felt like Eli was an underappreciated player. I know that you have strong feelings against this one. I know we've kind of had this conversation, I think, before, but when I look at Eli Manning, there are some things that I look at and say, okay, he's got production that leads me to believe he's in the conversation. He's got, 57,000 yards in his career. He passed for 366 touchdowns. Let's see where that ranks him all time, which is a little skewed because the modern game is so much more pass oriented. But like Eli Manning is 11th all time in passing right now. He's ahead of John Elway, ahead of Warren Moon, who are Hall of Famers. He's got 366 touchdowns. He did throw a lot of interceptions, which has always kind of bothered me. 244 interceptions. Completed 60% of his passes in his career. Had a 200 and was his all-time record as a starter was 117 and 117 because he played on some teams that weren't very good late in his career. But like that resume right there, 4-time Pro Bowler, that's a good resume that gets you at least in the conversation. What puts Eli over the top for me is he has an 8-4 postseason record. He won 2 Super Bowls, and in those Super Bowls, he beat Tom Brady twice. And when I say he beat him, like the team beat him, but he played well in those games, Trev. I mean, it's not like Eli sucked in those games and they won in spite of him.
He was the Super Bowl MVP in both.
Yeah, I mean, and made some big time throws. So, it's like I'm looking up. Let me pull it up here real quick. So in the first win where they beat the Randy Moss led team, he went 19 of 34 for 255 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick, and a 17-14 win, and led him back. And the play he made where he what wasn't the play that David Tyree caught in his head? Didn't he was that also the play where Eli broke off, almost got sacked, but broke off the sack, stepped up and made that throw? And then he throws, obviously, I think he threw the game winner to Plex, right? I believe, yeah. And then in the second Super Bowl, they won 21-17. He goes 30 of 40 for 296 yards and a touchdown in that game as well, and outdueled Tom Brady in that game that they won 21-17. So borderline Hall of Famer based on what he did in the regular season. I think, to me, you thrust him into that when you look at the fact that not that he win 2 Super Bowls, but the fact that in those 2 years where they won Super Bowls, he was a driving force behind it. It's not like he had a Trent Dilfer performance those seasons where it's like, dude, just don't screw it up. That's not how it was. I mean, the first Super Bowl was 07, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that season, they not only outdueled Tom Brady in the championship game, but he also outdueled Brett Favre in the NFC title game. He went 21 of 40 for 251 yards in a game against the Packers where they beat the Green Bay, in which just very few people have ever done in the playoffs. Went on the road and beat them there. So those things, I look at those things, Trev, and I'm like, it's hard for me to discount what Eli did the way that some people do because, he did this, he did that. I mean, the fact is the guy had some big time games, some big time moments. I mean, the second Super Bowl run, he was phenomenal in the postseason. He threw for 277, 330, 316, and 296. So he outdueled Alex Smith in the NFC title game that year. He outdueled Aaron Rodgers in the divisional playoff game. He goes 21 of 33 for 333 yards, 3 touchdowns, a pick. and Aaron Rodgers went 26 of 46 for 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Where was that game played? Pretty sure it was in Lambeau Field. So this guy's got 2 playoff road wins over Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre on his way to the playoffs. And then also that year also outdueled Matt Ryan in a playoff game. Like, it's hard for me to just discount that 2 playoff runs on top of multiple 4,000-yard seasons and all that kind of stuff and say he's not a Hall of Famer. So I wouldn't pick him for my team because I like quarterbacks that are a little bit more dynamic, and but it's hard for me to look at him and say that guy was a great player that put up big time numbers and won 2 Super Bowls and had to outduel in those years, had to beat Tom Brady twice, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Alex Smith, Matt Ryan in order to go to those teams. And his performance wasn't like riding the coattails of others. He was a driver of the success of those 2 teams. So that's my case for why I say Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I've been very bullish of the fact that I think Eli Manning is absolutely a Hall of Famer. Now, do I think he's a first ballot? I mean, no, but I absolutely think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And I honestly think some of it is just like people hear the name Eli Manning and all the arguments against him you could use for other quarterbacks that people talk about being a no-brainer Hall of Famer. Like, nobody ever questions if Brett Favre should have been in the Hall of Fame. But the interception conversation only comes up with Eli Manning. Brett Favre led the NFL all-time in history in NFL in interceptions thrown. He has one more Super Bowl than what Brett Favre does. I mean,
John Elway had years when he threw more picks than he threw touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, that
people talk about how it's like, well, the end of his career, he wasn't great. It's like, because Brett Favre was the GOAT with the Jets and the Vikings. Like, what are we talking about?
Right.
Like, it's just a name. And yes, the
he
things
also
that
played
are
on some really crap teams late in his career.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
Trav. But let's not forget his second to last year at age 37. He threw for 4,299 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 11 picks. His team sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he didn't play. I mean, he is arguably, next to Phil Simms, the best quarterback in that organization's history.
And I think you could make the case he was better than Simms from a longevity standpoint, because the unfortunate thing for Simms is his greatness was in a very short period of time. It was about a 7-year stretch because he got hurt so much. I mean, the second Super Bowl that Simms was the starting quarterback for the second Giants team, he didn't play in the Super Bowl because he had got hurt that year. Jeff Hostetler took over. And could you imagine what would Eli's, with all due respect to Phil Simms, what would Eli's record be if he spent his majority of his career playing with LT, Carl Banks, Leonard Marshall, Harry Carson? You know what I'm saying? Like that defense that Phil Simms got. It's not taking anything away from Phil Simms. And he had like Joe Morris and Mark Bavaro. And I mean, Phil was a great quarterback, playing some great teams. Sorry, but that yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, the conversations could go on for days and days. People talk about how the defense carried him through those 2 Super Bowls. Like, okay, well, one, he won the MVP in both of those. And it wasn't Justin Tuck. It wasn't Michael Strahan. It wasn't Asiu Manora. It wasn't Plaxico Burress. It was Eli Manning that won the 2 MVPs in both of those Super Bowls. And if I recall, his older brother, Peyton, who people will say, and I also agree with, is a better quarterback than what Eli was. Peyton Manning's performance in his final Super Bowl was terrible. So
as a Broncos fan, he got benched that year, remember? He got benched late that year for Brock Osweiler. And then fortunately the Broncos made the smart decision to bring him back because Brock Osweiler was not that dude.
Yes.
He was not that dude.
Yes. I mean, I know I've had this debate. On my bachelor party, I had this debate. There's people out there that think that Phillip Rivers is a no-brainer Hall of Famer, but they won't put Eli Manning in. And it's conversations like that I can just never entertain. Phillip
Rivers, who played with one of the best tight ends ever, played with one of the best running backs ever, had one of the better defenses in the league at the time, who never even sniffed the Super Bowl, really. That's a no-brainer Hall of Famer? Okay.
Yeah, played in 1 AFC championship in his entire career and lost.
Right.
Played with guys
it was all about stats for him. It was all about stats for him.
Yep. So I've been very bullish on this. Eli Manning is absolutely a Hall of Famer. I'm not saying that he's a first ballot, but he should 100% be.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We could have like multiple shows on whether certain guys should be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
Like, and there's some takes that people are like, yeah, exactly, Brian. And others are like, you're nuts. Like if we did should Donovan McNabb be a Hall of Famer show, that probably wouldn't be received as well by some, because I don't think that he is. But matter of fact, if you're going to tell me that a former Eagles quarterback needs to be in the Hall of Fame, I'll, there's a former Philadelphia Eagles dual threat mobile quarterback that never won a Super Bowl that I would make a case for before I would make one for Donovan McNabb. And that's Randall Cunningham. Like Randall Cunningham was before his time. To me, he's a Hall of Famer in my book. But yeah, I'd put him in before I'd put Donovan in. Just my 2 cents. Yeah. That'd be a fun show. So that'd be some fun shows. We should do some like bonus shows. Like we're just going to do a 10 o'clock PM show one Saturday night.
That'd be fun.
We're just going to talk about which quarterback should be in the Hall of Fame or not, and which quarterbacks that are in the Hall of Fame maybe shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Bradshaw. Excuse me. I had a little something in my throat. So, but yeah, that's a really, really fun question. Really fun question.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you, Paul. Hey, another one for Paul. Do you think that the narrative that Tyler Buckner sucks at quarterback is fair?
No, I think it's silly, but there's nothing that's going to change anyone's mind. So he played 3 games. There's a reason why the staff was high on him. Mm-hmm. He made some choices that were probably not smart, but he did not suck. He did not suck.
Heard that. I am Tenzin. What are you looking forward to most during the full access practice?
Quarterbacks. I mean, that's the biggest question mark right now that we can potentially have some answers for. We won't be able to have answers on the offensive line for a host of reasons. But yeah, we quarterback. That's really it. I mean, there's other things. I mean, I'm looking forward to the receivers and what does the defense look like and some of the young running backs. I got a little intel last night on how one of the young running backs is looking in fall camp. I'm going to have that out. I'm going to drop a big intel piece at the end of spring with some of that stuff. But quarterbacks, man, it's a no-brainer. Sorry. It just is. It's just good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Gotcha. Andrew Rivers was great. He only had one good wide receiver, Vinny Jackson. He had Antonio Gates, bruh. He had one of arguably the greatest tight end, and some people make on his only had one receiver. We just gonna pretend like Antonio Gates just like doesn't count as a big-time pass catcher. That's like me saying like John Elway's the greatest ever. Why? Well, he only had Ed McCaffrey and Rod Smith, and pretend like Shannon Sharp doesn't count. You know what I mean? Like, come on, bro. Seriously? He played with Antonio Gates his whole career. Are you kidding me right now? He only had Vincent Jackson was his only good receiver.
You're also gonna talk about him like Vincent Jackson is 11th all time in Chargers receiving yards over the course of their career. First is Antonio Gates, then it's Keenan Allen, then it's Mike Williams, all players that he played with. LaDainian Tomlinson is 13th on that list all time in receiving yards. All players that Phillip Rivers played with. Come on.
Exactly.
Come on.
I mean, you had a running back who had a year where he caught 100 passes. I mean, you're going to act like he only had – I mean, look, with all due respect, John Elway went to 3 Super Bowls where his best receiver was either Mark Jackson or Vance Johnson. That – we can say, okay, that guy went to Super Bowls with nobody. Dude had Vincent Jackson, Antonio Gates, and LaDainian Tomlinson, and we're going to act like he was deprived of weapons? Are you serious? Are you serious? And then here's my other one. Rivers played against 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Eli Manning, best rap little battle of all time. Eli Manning said, I believe, Tom Brady's the GOAT. He's nice. Psych. I beat him twice. You know what I mean? Like, hey, Eli could beat him. And could you imagine if Eli had LaDainian Tomlinson, Vincent Jackson, Antonio Gates for his whole career? Are you serious? Are you kidding me right now?
Ben Roethlisberger played in the AFC as well when Manning and Brady were both there and also won Super Bowls. Rivers 1 year had the number 1 defense.
Super Bowls.
Yes. Rivers one year had the #1 defense in the NFL. They went 8-8. Don't talk to me about dude. I could go on about this for days, bro. Like when I wasn't kidding. We were sitting in the hot tub of my bachelor party, and then 3 hours later, we were done talking about Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning. Dude, I have this. Yeah,
dude. The leading rusher for the Giants in the Super Bowl, the second Super Bowl that Eli Manning won, was Ahmad Bradshaw. The leading pass catcher in the Super Bowl was Hakeem Nicks. Number 2 was Mario Manningham. Like, come on. I have no sympathy for a guy who spent his whole career with LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, and Vincent Jackson as he was deprived of weapons. Come on, dude. Seriously. Give Rivers, Justin Tuck, and Michael Strahan. Oh, you mean like, I don't know, Sean Merriman? Really? Are we going to act like his defenses weren't good? Sometimes, dude, it's okay to just say, you know what? I'm going to take the L on this one because this is not a good argument to make. Come on, man. You're going to act like he didn't have weapons on defense. He had Sean Merriman his whole career. I'm looking at this year, was it 2009, a year where Phillip Rivers threw for 4,200 yards. His top 3 pass catchers that year were Antonio Gates, Vincent Jackson, Darren Sproles, Malcolm Floyd, LaDainian Tomlinson. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, dude was not deprived of weapons. He had some pretty darn good freaking weapons on that football team. So I'm gonna have to disagree with you a little bit on the lack of talent that he allegedly had on that football team. So yeah, he had some pretty darn good players on that team. So and also I just don't like him. You know, I mean, he had Rodney Harrison was on that team a little bit. So that's hilarious. It's always somebody else's fault. It's okay to sometimes say, you know what, I might want to sit this one out because my arguments aren't going to be real strong.
But it's not Eli Manning's fault, though. It's Eli Manning's fault.
No. Yeah. I love you, Andrew. I love how you argue a case no matter how bad your argument may be. You're going to stick to it. I love that fortitude that you have, man. I love it. He only had Vincent Jackson. He spent his whole career with Antonio Gates and LaDainian Tomlinson, but he only had Vincent Jackson to throw to. Really, my man won a Super Bowl where Mario Manningham was the second leading receiver in that game. Hakeem Nicks led him in rushing, and his leading rusher was Ahmad Bradshaw. Come on, man. Oh, my goodness. That's phenomenal. I'm sorry, PQ, what to do? He's got a couple super chats in a row.
Yeah. Super chat in here from PK. What it do if the answer to which quarterback gives us the best chance to beat Miami and which quarterback gives us the best chance to win the national championship are 2 different players, who should start versus Miami?
The guy who gives them the best chance to win the national championship. And the reason why that might be a different answer, maybe in a 4-team playoff, maybe, where you could say, you've got to win that first game, and then you can figure out the rest later because you've got to give yourself the best chance to go 12-0. Maybe we have that argument in a 4-team playoff. In a 12-team playoff, that argument means nothing to me. We're coming off of a year in which Notre Dame, in week 2, at home, lost to Northern Illinois in a game where they trailed almost the entire game.
Yeah.
And not only made the playoffs, Trev, but comfortably hosted. And we argued, got kind of jabbed a little bit because they should have been seated even higher.
Yeah.
But even how they were seated, they were still the 7 seed. And so they would have had to fall 2 spots, I believe, to not host a game. Actually, no, they'd have had to fall 3 spots. No, 2. Yeah, 2 spots to not host a game. So if you lose first game of the year at Miami, okay, I mean, it sucks. I don't ever like losing to Miami, but that doesn't knock you out of the playoffs. So give me the guy that gives them the best chance to win it all. And here's the other thing too, is like this notion that, well, you know, because here's how the argument goes. Okay, Steve gives them the best chance to win the first 2 games. I agree to disagree, but even if I grant your premise, so inexperience. You don't want to play in a big-time environment first start with all that stuff in Miami against Texas A&M. Okay, fair. So you're going to wait for that quarterback to get to the playoffs to play in a big game like that. So the first time he plays in a playoff game, that's going to be by far the wildest environment. If anything, don't you think playing at Miami in the opener and playing against A&M at home in your home opener will be great experience for that guy, even if he struggles, to then go and help you be more ready in the postseason? I think there's merit to that. And I'll go back again. If your quarterback, if you lose the first two games, and that's the fear, like, well, what if you lose both of the first two? If you start the season 0-2, your problems go way beyond quarterback. Way beyond quarterback. And so then it doesn't matter anyway because nobody's leading them to the championship. You should be able to start off worst case 1-1 with any of your quarterbacks, including Blake Hebert, who's a true freshman, because of the rest of your team. And that's why I say, give me the guy that gives you the best chance to win a championship, because he needs that. Even if he doesn't play great in those first two games, Trev, that's a great learning experience that he won't have with anybody else left on the schedule, in my opinion. Just because there may be some better teams in Miami or A&M, but it's the opener on the road and then the wild home opener with all the electricity that comes with home openers and all that type of stuff. It's going to be a wild environment, wild crowd. You're going to want him to be in that environment to deal with the jitters and things like that of that game. And here's the other thing is, if Steve Angeli is your starter the first two games because he gives you the best chance to win those two games, what if he wins them? You're going to then, bench him after he beats Miami and Texas A&M? No, you put the guy out there that you think gives you the best chance to play for a championship, not win the first game or two. And that's where you got to trust the rest of your team in that situation.
And we saw an example of that this season. An argument could have been made that after Northern Illinois, Steve Angeli could have given that team going into that week the best chance on paper to beat Purdue, especially after Riley Leonard's performance against a Northern Illinois, because at that time, Purdue was 1-0. I think their win was against an FCS team, but Purdue was 1-0. Notre Dame just lost at home to Northern Illinois, a MAC school. Nobody was screaming from the rooftops that Riley Leonard should have been the number one quarterback in that room, but you have to see big picture. And Riley Leonard for that team was going to give them the best opportunity to win a national championship, and that's who they stuck with. Because a week prior, you saw what he was able to do and the things that he was able to do against Texas A&M. And so for all those reasons, you need to start with the guy that gives you the biggest picture result at the end, which is a national championship. So I'm with you on that one. Another one from PK, what it do? Thank you for the super chat. When is the last time Notre Dame had the best running back in the country?
2025. I know what he means. He means before this. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know in my lifetime if Notre Dame ever definitely had the best running back in the country. I think you could argue that. Let me see here. Let me look at so I believe that no, even then, yeah. So Jerome Bettis was the number 10 overall pick in 1993 NFL draft, but the number one running back taken that year was actually Garrison Hurst. So I don't know, and I believe Marshall Faulk was also in college football that year as well. Like, I don't know that there's ever been a time where they've had the best running back in the sport. Yeah, in 1992, the year that Jerome Bettis had a great year, he wasn't even the leading rusher on the Notre Dame team. You say, okay, well, could Reggie Brooks have been maybe in that conversation? Possibly. I mean, Reggie, I believe, finished in the top 10 in Heisman voting that year. He rushed for 1,343 yards, 13 touchdowns, averaged 8 yards a carry, which is nuts. Jerome that year rushed for 825 yards and 10 touchdowns, had 15 catches for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns. Crazy thing about that year, Reggie Brooks caught the game-winning 2-point conversion against Penn State. He only had 1 catch all year. 1 catch all season, like outside of that, like, because that didn't count as a catch because it's overtime, which I think is lame, but he had 1 catch all year for 24-yard touchdown. But that same year, 1992, you had Marshall Faulk was at San Diego State. He was pretty good. You had Garrison Hurst that year. Let me look at Garrison Hurst. He was a pretty good running back too in college, but he He tore his knee up in the NFL, but Garrison Hurst in 1992 rushed for 1,547 yards, 19 touchdowns, 6.8 per carry, had 22 catches for 324 yards. So it was I'm going to look see who some of the other leading rushers were that season, because there were some, like, you were still kind of in that golden era of running back play too, Trev. That in the 80s and early 90s, you had some great running backs in college football that were come along. So it's hard to. It's hard. Here's just a sample of some of the running backs. Marshall Faulk led the nation in rushing that year. Garrison Hurst was next. You had Reggie Brooks. You had Greg Hill at A&M was a really good player. Bam Morris at Texas Tech was a really good player. You had Natrone Means rushed for over 1,100 yards at North Carolina that year. Terry Kirby, Tyrone Wheatley, Napoleon Kaufman. Those are some of the running backs. Hey, you want to know who the number 28 rusher in the country that year was with 1,026 yards, Trev? Dylan McCullough.
Come on now.
From Miami, Ohio. Was the number 28 rusher that year for the old they were I think they were the Redskins back then. Tico Duckett. So there were some really good running backs. Lorenzo Neal, Charlie Garner from Tennessee. Some really good running backs. Eric Rhett from Florida was a really good running back. So 93 they didn't have. I mean, Lee Becton was a really good runner that year, but you had better runners than him. Autry Denson was never the best runner in college football. I mean, you'd probably have to go back to maybe the 80s. I mean, some of you old, folks that are a little older than I am, was Vegas Ferguson or Alan Pinkett considered the best running backs in the game back? I mean, I would think probably not, but I don't know that I'd say they've ever had the number one running back in the country. Now, there might have been some years going into the season they had someone considered the number one back, but I don't know when that would have been, to be honest with you. When was the last time Notre Dame went into a season with the number one ranked running back and arguably the number one ranked cornerback in the class as well? I had that article up on the site today.
I mean, I can tell you confidently in my lifetime, I don't know if Notre Dame has ever finished the season with the best running back in the country. There's been some arguments to be made, but I just went back and looked at some stats of guys that I thought could be in the conversation. I mean, Josh Adams in 2017 wasn't anywhere near the top for the special season he had. He got hurt at the end of the year. I mean, if we're talking strictly numbers, even Jeremiah Love last year, I think as a pure all-around back, I think is in the conversation. But Ashton Jeanty did what he did. And I understand there's a conversation to be had of, well, what if Love got the carries he did? That's fair, but he didn't. Fact of the matter is, it's hard to proclaim somebody's the best running back in the country off of.
I love Jeremiah Love, but he wasn't Ashton Jeanty last year.
No.
Come on.
No. I went back. I looked at some of Kyron's stats.
Kyron Williams in 2021 was not even in the conversation. Look, he was a heck of a player that year for Notre Dame, and no, he didn't have good blocking, and his numbers. But guys, you had Kenneth Walker, Michigan State that year was a stud. You had Breece Hall that year for Iowa State was a stud. Bijan Robinson. I mean, Deuce Vaughn was a phenomenal player that year. Kyron Williams was better than what his numbers would otherwise show, just because of the poor blocking. I'll give you all that. I mean, he was a good player that year for Notre Dame, but he was not in the conversation for best running back. Braylon Allen was a better running back than he was. I mean, there was a way better running backs.
Yep. And then in 2020, Najee Harris was still at Alabama.
Yeah.
Going off. So, I mean, I would make the argument that Audric Estime last year is closer to that conversation than what Kyron was in 2021.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, Ollie Gordon was still a better runner than he was. But the thing about the thing that gives Audric in that conversation is his yards per carry were super high. He was at 6.4. The only guys ahead of him, he was at 6.39. The only running backs ahead of him was Penny Boone from Toledo, who was at 7.2. But Ashton Jeanty, I'd still take over Audric last year. He was pretty good. His O-line wasn't nearly as good. And Omarion Hampton was pretty good. The Cody Schrader kid from Missouri was a really good player, and Ollie Gordon was fantastic. But I think you're right, Trev. Audric probably has the best claim to that, because Audric didn't have great blocking either last year. I mean, it wasn't as bad as what Kyron had to deal with at all. And again, Kyron's a dual threat. We're not saying Kyron was a bad player. Kyron was a good football player for Notre Dame. He's a dual threat. He did all these. he wasn't the best running back in college football, and that's what the conversation was. It wasn't when was the last time Notre Dame had a really good running back. It was the best in the country, and I don't see how you can make a non-homerous argument that Kyren Williams was ever the best running back in college football. He wasn't.
No, it was also reflected a little bit in the NFL draft that year. I mean,
right now
Kenneth
he has
Walker,
shown that he was undervalued by what he's done in the NFL. And again, but like even now, like, you know, he's one of the leading rushers. Would anyone want to sit here and tell me he's the best running back in the NFL? No, he's not. It's okay to say he was really good. And I look at a guy like Kyren and say, what would Kyren have done, for example, in, you know, with this offensive line this year or last year's offensive line? I don't know those lines were astronomically better than the one he played on in 2020. I mean, we forget and say, you know, Kyren didn't have a great offensive line in 2021. Very true, but are we going to sit there and try to pretend like the 2020 offensive line he played behind wasn't really good and only averaged 5.3 yards per carry that year? Chris Tyree on that same team averaged 6.8 yards per carry. So Kyren was a heck of a back. He was never the best running back in college football. He just wasn't. I think we're in my lifetime. It's Audrick's got the best argument.
Yeah.
Audrick's got the best argument.
Yeah.
Somebody said, I'm trying to see if anybody responded to the comments about Alan Pinkett or Vegas Ferguson. Mike Hanashowski said Pinkett was the whole offense. I wish he could have played for Holtz. Yeah, he would have. From what I've heard about Alan Pinkett, he would have been real good playing for Lou Holtz. Real good playing for Lou Holtz. All right, good stuff, guys. Very good stuff.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. What do you think is the biggest what if in sports?
Oh, gosh. Biggest what if in sports. I got one. Again, this is partially my own fandom bias. What if, that was really a bad pun that was not intended to be a pun. What if Len Bias doesn't die in 1986 when he gets drafted by the Celtics? Like, Len Bias was a phenomenal player. And the Celtics had just won the NBA championship with what some argue is the greatest team ever. Team went 40-1 at home, just dominated in the postseason. Larry Bird was still in his prime. And Len Bias was coming off of a year at Maryland where he was a first-team All-American. He was a 6'8", kind of small forward. He averaged 23 points, 7 rebounds that year before. Just phenomenal athlete. And he would have come in playing for Larry, with Larry Bird. And then a lot of people said Larry Bird's career probably would have lasted a little bit longer because starting in after the 86 season, the Celtics started dealing with a lot of injuries. And Larry Bird's 2 best scoring seasons were actually 87 and 88, the 2 years after his last MVP. The 87 season was his 3rd best scoring all time. The 88 season was his best scoring season of all time. He averaged 29.9 points. But he had to do so much because that team just, like, McHale was banged up a lot. Parrish was banged up a lot. DJ got banged up a lot. And then, obviously Len Bias would have helped a ton with taking some of that pressure off of Larry Bird. So that's a big one for me. Like, would he have been able to continue that dynasty? And if you want to get really kind of what if about it, what if Bias and Reggie Lewis both don't pass away? Because people forget Reggie Lewis was becoming a big-time player in the NBA. He was also drafted. He was drafted a year later by the Celtics in the first round. So the year after they drafted Len Bias, they drafted Reggie Lewis. And Reggie Lewis's last 2 years in the NBA, he scored 20.8 and 20.8 points per game. He was kind of a hybrid shooting guard, small forward. And then he died. He had a heart condition and died playing basketball. Just died. He was 27 years old. Len Bias would have been in the prime of his career at that time when Reggie also passed away. That's when the Celtics dynasty died, literally. was, I think, with those two guys passing away, because there was no one for Larry Bird. Like Red Auerbach could put two great players together, drafted them in back-to-back years to kind of take over the mantle and continue the greatness. And they both tragically passed away within 6 years of each other. Len Bias, the night he was drafted, overdosed, and then Reggie Lewis had a tragic, heart condition that didn't get properly handled, and then he, tragically passed away as he was going into the prime of his career. So that's the biggest what if for me, is what would the Celtics dynasty have looked like had Len Bias and then even Reggie Lewis not passed away tragically in that form. So yeah, that would be one for me. Like you talk to people from the 80s, they're like, Len Bias was the second best player in the college game in that era, and the only one people would say was better was Michael Jordan. Like in that, because Jordan was like about 3 or 4 years before Len Bias, but yeah, he was going to be so good.
Couple off the top of my head. What if, for me, sticking with basketball, like what if Derrick Rose didn't get hurt? I mean, he was one of the most electric players that I watched growing up. Derrick Rose was insane. So, like, what happens if Derrick Rose doesn't get hurt? What happens if Aaron Rodgers gets drafted by the 49ers and they don't take Alex Smith? More recently, what if the Bears didn't draft Mitch Trubisky? I know that's kind of a big one.
Oh, if they're taking like Pat Mahomes?
Yeah. I mean, or even Deshaun Watson. Like, I mean, what would have happened with either of them? I mean, not the biggest fan of Deshaun Watson for obvious reasons, but, what happens with them? So those are some of the ones for me. Notre Dame specifically, what if Notre Dame didn't bring back Brian Van Gorder in 2016? I mean, what if they didn't have him in 2015? Gosh. Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs.
I think the biggest what if for me, for Notre Dame history, there's some people talking about like, what if Urban Meyer would have chose Notre Dame over Florida in 2004? Like that'd have been special, but I still say, what if Randy Moss would have got into Notre Dame? Ron Paulus's career would have looked way different. Because Lou would have been forced to open up the offense a little bit more if he had Randy Moss. He'd have been forced to. And Ron Paulus's career would have looked way different. Maybe he wouldn't be as bitter as he is now, but I mean, his career would have been way different. I think he would have been a lot like what people thought he was. Maybe he still injures the collarbone, but if you'd had him and Malcolm Johnson and Bobby Brown and some of those guys in the same receiving corps, good night. That'd have been fun to watch.
I mean, shoot, man, based on our conversation from earlier, what if Ezekiel Elliott came here and they didn't think he was a DB? What if A.J. Dillon wasn't a linebacker?
Right.
But still,
think about this. Randy Moss playing for a Lou Holtz coach football team.
Oh, I mean,
just yeah. Bino Cook might look like a savant if Ron Paulus got to play a couple years with Randy Moss. Man, that would have been that'd have been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
That'd have been a lot of fun. Actually, let me go look up when was Randy? I think he'd have been a freshman because he missed the 1 year. He'd have been a freshman in 95. So that'd have been Paulus's second year as a starter. I mean, Notre Dame in 1995 and 96 was 8-3 and was still an 8-3, 9-3 football team. They weren't terrible. 1995 would have been Randy's freshman year. Notre Dame still went 9-3 that year. Lost to Florida State in the Orange Bowl by 5. That'd have been a fun ride, man. That'd have been a fun ride. Wish we had a chance to see it. Yeah. But I do think the biggest impact of that is like 1995. I'm sorry. I said Malcolm Brown and Bobby Brown and Malcolm Johnson. Do you actually know who his sidekick would have been as a receiver in 19, or who he would have been a sidekick to? The leading receiver from Notre Dame in 95, which would have been Randy Moss's freshman year, was Derek Mays. So it would have been Randy Moss and Derek Mays playing together in 1995. And then the next year it was Bobby Brown and Malcolm Johnson. But could you imagine that? Good night. That'd have been fun to watch. Mark Edwards was your fullback. Emmett Mosley was on that team. Pete Kriplevitz, who was drafted, was on that team. That'd have been a fun year of football. Derek Mays and Randy Moss in the same receiving corps. Yes, please. Yes, please. That'd have been fun. Oh, goodness gracious.
Tommy Guns, Leonard Moore is PFF's #1 returning cornerback. Do you agree that he's the best corner in the country?
I do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there's nobody else that belongs in the conversation, but I do think he's the best returning corner in college football. Yeah. And if you think about it, like most of the top corners this past season are in the NFL now. Jahdae Barron, Travis Hunter. So yes, I believe he's in that conversation. I believe he's the best cornerback in college football. Yes. Yeah, Will Johnson's gone as well. Yeah.
All chips on the table too. I think they're also taking into consideration the level that he played at as a true freshman as well, which I think is another important factor. So yeah, absolutely, I do too.
Yeah. And it was interesting because you look at these lists that they have, and they don't have, or like in a lot of these lists, when you look at them, Trev, they Notre Dame's had a lot of guys on them, and they don't face anybody, like opponents, I should say, but they don't have anybody. They don't actually play anybody. But like #2 is Jermod McCoy from Tennessee, who's a good football player. D'Angelo Pons from Indiana is a good football player. He wasn't as good last year as Leonard Moore. Avion Terrell from Clemson is a good football player. He's not on Leonard Moore's level. Chandler Rivers from Duke is a good football player. He's not as good. Malik Muhammad from Texas is a really talented kid who I could see make a big jump and maybe jump into the conversation. But like right now, he's not. AJ Harris from Penn State's not in the same league as him. So, I mean, some of the top guys you're looking at just to me aren't on Leonard Moore's level. But, we'll see how the season plays out. But, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Good question, Tommy.
Aiden Benami, thoughts on the tush push? I see both sides. A lot of defensive players making a decent case. Other end, it's freaking football. Stop me.
I mean, I don't like that last part. I mean, it's freaking football. Stop me. I mean, I can't, because you're getting an unfair advantage to me. I mean, look, when a defensive player hits an offensive player and the momentum stops, you can't drive him back 5 more yards and hey, he's got to stop me from tackling him back 15 yards. I'm going to pick him up, carry him back 15 yards. Hey, it's football. Stop me. Well, then why is the offense allowed to do something where you stop the guy and then some big guy can come up behind him and then push the line forward? I just don't think that's a rule that I think that's just not, I don't know. I think that's not in the spirit of what the game should be about, in my opinion. I just like the Matt Leinart touchdown against Notre Dame. I mean, he got stopped. He was stopped. I mean, but then Reggie Bush can kind of come up late and push him over. I mean, if the momentum stops at that point for the defense, it should also stop for the offense, in my opinion. Like, it's not like where a running back hits a guy and he drags him and then the rest of the team jumps on and he's still pushing them forward. The momentum never stopped. When you hit a guy and his momentum stops, someone else shouldn't be allowed to come in and change that dynamic. Now, if he changed that dynamic, you get into the hole and you hit Jeremiah Love, and we saw this happen this year. You hit him, and then all of a sudden he gets off that hit because you couldn't bring him down. That's a different story. But when you've got him stopped and he's not going anywhere, and then somebody else comes from behind him and they start pushing that pile, I don't think that should be. I think that should be treated just like when you stop a guy defensively and you're going to push him back. That's how I feel. And I'm an offensive guy, and I don't like that. I don't like that rule at all. And it's also a really lame. It's a football tush push. It's lame. Come up with something better name for it. Sounds ridiculous.
I don't mind aiding a runner in certain circumstances. I just think what the Eagles do specifically, the play is, like, for all intents and purposes, like, it is unstoppable. Like, once you factor in being able to assist a runner, like, it's just, I don't know what the caveat is, unfortunately, outside of just banning it. And then you get into the conversation of like, okay, so then do you just ban quarterback sneaks as a whole? So like it gets a little bit messy. It's kind of the hole that dug themselves into. But yeah, I just the tush
I
push
don't think
hadn't,
you need to. Why would you need to get rid of quarterback sneaks?
because that's what the tush push is.
Yeah, but it's someone
Like
coming
what
from
the
behind him and then pushing the quarterback.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like the hole that they dug themselves into. It's like you have to get rid of either one of assisting a runner or the QB sneak, because the play has both. And so like it's just you don't like one of them has to
Get
go if
rid of
you're
the
going to
assisting
ban the
part.
tush
Yeah.
push specifically.
Get rid of the assisting part. You can't come up behind an offensive player and push him forward. Yeah. And it doesn't need to be a penalty. It's just like, no, if the momentum was stopped, the momentum stopped and the play's just dead. That's where it's at. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying now, Trev. I was like, hold on a second. What do you mean you got to get – I see what you're saying now. Like if you put – yeah, I get you. Makes sense. Yep. Really good questions today.
Yeah. Question from it's a buy sell hold. Okay. Buy sell hold from Jeff Fluke. Buy sell hold, the loss to Ohio State was more about getting out coached and less about the player's star level coming out of high school.
I don't think it had anything to do with star level coming out of high school. I mean, the best cornerback on the field that day was a 3-star kid from Texas. I don't think that has anything to do with it. It was about not getting out coached and outplayed. That's what it was about. And what was Will Howard's ranking coming out of high school? He threw some absolute dimes in that game.
Like 936.
Yeah. So he was a 3-star player. He was not only a 3-star player by rivals, but he was the 3-star player at the lowest level of 3-starness. You know, they got that 5'7", 5'6", 5'5". He was a 5'5". So Ohio State didn't out-talent Notre Dame. They outplayed Notre Dame, and they outcoached Notre Dame. That's facts. Yeah. And you say, well, yeah, but Notre Dame, if they would have had one more possession. Yeah, but they didn't have time for one more possession because Ohio State outplayed them so much in the first 2.5 quarters. Yeah, Notre Dame outplayed them in the last quarter and a half until that last drive, but that they were the better team that day. They were coached better and they played better.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And it wasn't about star rankings and all that kind of stuff. And it was their players were better than Notre Dame's players.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in this situation specifically, I guess I'll buy it because they did get out coached, especially in comparison to star level. Like we just got done talking about Leonard Moore. He was a 3-star. It had nothing to do with star rankings to me. I mean, their final offensive possession of the game where they just had to get like all first down and the game was essentially over, or at the very least, Ohio State wouldn't have had enough time to drive down the field like they did, was one of the worst called / executed offensive drives that Notre Dame had that season. 1, 2, you run 10 guys out of a huddle, out of a timeout. Like it was poor coaching in the biggest moments. And so yes, it was definitely more about coaching than player start level, for sure. It's a good question, Jeff.
I don't want to hear, well, the 2 DNs were 5 stars because Notre Dame started a top 100 tackle at right tackle and a 5-star at left tackle. So again, it wasn't about star rankings, about those guys were better players that day. Notre Dame also started a top 100 player at left guard. You know, like it's not about star ranking. It's about what they were.
No. Joke.
And Jeremiah Smith was a 5-star. And the guy he beat was a top 100 player. It's not about star rankings. It was a bad play call. He shouldn't have been in a one-on-one there. It's not about star rankings. Who threw the football? 3-star. It's about their players played better and their coaches coached better. It wasn't a thing where Ohio State just out-talented. They were the better team. They outplayed Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame took the star players on the D linemen. What did they do on the first drive of the game? They got bullied all the way down to the end zone, and then Notre Dame started shooting themselves in the foot on their next 2 drives. I broke this down. I did a 10-minute video, 5-10-minute video on the board about this. Right, the next 2 series, Notre Dame had false starts and missed blocks and things that were 100% their mistakes. And if they don't make those mistakes, Jadarian Price had 2 plays where he's about to go 75, 80 yards on 1 drive, and they got negated by one stupid penalty and a guard not wrapping around and making a block. If he wraps around, Jadarian bounces that, and he's gone. the play where they did the false start. If they don't false start that, Jadarian's about to bounce that and score. And Notre Dame goes back up. Those weren't about Ohio State's DNs being better than them. It was about Notre Dame didn't play well. Ohio State played well. That's what it's about. It's not about 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. It's not about that. They coached better and they played better. Simple as that.
John A1 in 20.
Oh, sorry.
We got that one. Oh, no worries. John A1, assuming quarterbacks will carry the ball at half the rate Leonard did, and there's 6 more carries per game for the running back room. Who gets those carries?
I'd say 3 go to Jeremiah Love, 2 go to Jadarian Price, 1 goes to Anias Williams because it'll be a 3rd down run.
Fair enough.
It's where things are right now, yeah.
Yep, I'm with that.
Got another one from John. He's got some really good ones here.
As Jaylen Sneed seems to be stronger and consistently over 230, do you project him to be a more effective pass rusher?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the burst is still the same, Trev, you've said that what you've seen in practice, and then obviously what Max Bulla had said is that there is no loss in explosiveness from Jaylen Sneed with the additional weight. That'll help him a little bit, John. Being stronger will help him. But the big thing for Jaylen Sneed is still going to be block destruction. He still has to improve it of block destruction and timing of his pressures. Those are still the 2 biggest areas where he's going to need to get better. But look, being thicker and stronger never hurts you as a player as long as your athleticism remains the same. It's like, well, I could be just as athletic, but I could be stronger and about 8 pounds heavier. Nah, I'm good. No, I certainly think it could help him, John, because as you get stronger, if your block destruction technique improves and you now have additional strength to win to win in that situation, then that's going to make you more effective. If you're stronger when you have that initial engagement with an offensive lineman, it gives you a better chance to win on that snap. If you're stronger and you've got a little bit, about 10 pounds more booty coming behind you, again, it's going to be something that gives you a little bit extra something to win on those plays, assuming your timing and your block destruction technique is proper. So it certainly helps, in my opinion.
Yeah, it'll help with pass rush. I think, though, to Brian's point, the reason why I put on the weight is to become a more effective every down linebacker. Because Max Bulla talked about in his press conference about how he would go in run plays and he'd get bounced out by blockers because he just didn't have enough weight behind him. And so I think, John, where you're going to see that the most effective for him is in stopping the run, not just rushing the passer.
I want to go down here, some of the ones we haven't had yet. So let me go down here. We did this one we got that one right about what we're most looking forward to. I think we got that one. Salty. We haven't had Salty today. So let's get to Salty. It's about time you put Jaden Greathouse as your avatar, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's about time.
From Salty Virginia Peanuts, the great one seemed laser focused and extremely intense during his press conference 2 days ago. Have you noticed increases in his intentionality and focus during practice?
Well, we've only seen warm-ups and drills, and he looks just as locked in as he did last year, and that's a good thing. It's look, with all due respect to the spring, and it's an important period, but there's nothing the spring's going to teach us about Jaden Greathouse being better. It's going to come in the fall when we get to games. And Jaden's always been a really locked in, focused, intentional football player in practice. That's always been there. It's just going to be about comfort within the system. I think he learned how to win a little bit more effectively late last year. I think he got more comfortable with, like we talked a lot about Riley getting more comfortable with the receivers, but I think Jaylen got a better sense of who Riley was. How do I got to work open? Like a lot of times on that late 3rd down play where Riley rolls left and just a lot of receivers would have turned around and started blocking. But Jaden had read Riley enough to know, because when Riley's going to scramble, the ball drops more and he gets into more of a runner stance and to turn around and block. But when he's still running, but he's got the ball here, he's still looking. And so while the defense said, go tackle Riley Leonard, Jaden Greathouse said, get open. And so when they went to him, Jaden was there as opposed to Jaden being like, oh, Riley's scrambling again, turn around and block. So there was that sense of he had a better sense of his fit into the offense and what others around him were doing. I think that just made him a better player. Doing a better job winning off the line, getting just a step more separation at times. All those things helped him as a young player improve his craft, but he's always been a very focused and intentional young man. I don't know if that can get a whole lot better, with how good he is in those areas. That's why we've talked about him being a guy that I'd be a little surprised if he's not a captain for this football team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a small sample size. It is one, going back to I am Tenzin's question, one of the things I'm interested to see him, Jaden Greathouse, out on the field full-time at practice, but I don't think I'm going to be surprised by anything that I see from him. So I'm with you. The wide receivers were credited with 26 drops last season, 13 from
Misters.
Oh, okay.
Basically.
13 from Bo Collins and Jordan Faison. From your experience as a player and a coach, is it just a matter of player focus or is it more?
It varies from player to player. I mean, with those two young men, I think it was mostly focus and just not being locked in the moment. I've seen other guys that struggle to catch the ball because they don't have good technique or they don't have good hands. Like, you see a lot of guys, like I always taught, like when the ball is below your chest, you have your hands this way. When the ball is above your chest, you flip your hands this way. So I this experience. So Trev, put your hands like this. So where you're going to catch the ball here. Like, okay. So like stick it out right here. Now, as you raise it up, what do you feel? Your elbows get tighter, right? So go like this. So you went from here tight. Now go like this. A lot more comfortable, right? You can feel there's not as much strain on your. So a lot of receivers will still try to catch like this above their chest. It's bad technique. A lot of guys will try to catch like this down low when in reality you need to go like this because, again, down low and your hands are like this, you've got more of a cushion to keep the ball. Where here, you don't have as much – your hands aren't positioned because when it goes lower, you don't have as much strength when your hands are like this in your hands. Whereas here, you can cup it better. And so those are things that not all receivers coaches coach that type of minute detail. So you'll see a guy try to catch the ball like this up top, and he doesn't catch it. It's got to be like this up top. And so there's technical things that you can do to improve a guy's catching ability in those situations. Guys that let the ball get into their chest too much, as opposed to catching it here and bringing it into your chest. They just try to let it bounce off your chest, as opposed to catching it and bringing it into your chest. Just go like this and boom, and then they drop it. So it may look like it's the same thing, but no, the great ones, they're actually catching it like this, but it's actually their hands that are hitting the ball first. Whereas the guys that drop more, it's like their hands are like this, and they're thinking they're going to catch it like a punt returner. Where it's like, no, punt's coming down like this. A fastball is coming like that. It's going to look a whole lot different bouncing off your chest. So just there are plenty of technical things that you can do to improve a guy's catching ability. Some guys don't focus on the right part of the ball. It's kind of like, I won't use a shooting example this time, but look, the ball's coming at you. Are you still looking at the quarterback? Are you just looking at the ball generally? Or do you really lock in on the tip of the football? That's going to help determine your hand-eye coordination. Lock in on a small part of football. One thing I learned, I'm trying to remember who taught me this, but when I was still playing, it might have been my first year coaching, but like, I think I was still playing. I think it was at a camp when I was in high school, I think is where I learned it. But I went to a camp one time, and the receivers coach was talking about, like, put little tiny X's on, like, take the tip of the football, and you just put, like, little X's on it. And when you're working with your receivers, like, you put numbers on it. And so as the ball's coming at you, they'd have to tell you what the number was. Because it was on the tip of the ball, you'd have to look at it and say 5. And because you got to look at the tip of the ball, and it was just it was the coach training them to get your eyes on the tip of the ball. Because if your eyes are on the tip and then you catch the front fat part of the football, as opposed to trying to catch the middle fat part of the football, and then it's too far into you. You also don't want to catch the tip of the football, because then it's like that weird, you want to catch the front fat part of the football with your eyes locked right in on the tip. Little things like that can absolutely help a guy catch the football better. Guy that's running curl routes that tries to catch the ball like this, and the ball keeps getting bounced in front of him, as opposed to a guy that steps to the football. So, like, if I run a curl route and that guy's 2 steps behind me and I'm sitting waiting on the ball, catching it here, he's going to come over top of me. If I sit and wait and I catch the ball here, I got a little better shot at catching it, but he can still come down and club me and knock the ball out. But if the ball's coming and he's about on me and I step to the football, he's tackling me for a 12-yard gain. Like, little things like that are certainly technical things that can help a receiver be better catching the football. But with last year, however, in most instances, it was just a lack of focus and concentration. That was it.
Fair enough. John A1, if Cam Williams can thrive in the boundary position, does that mean he'd also thrive in the field position if they move him back when the other boundary receivers return or arrive?
Well, it's not so much about moving him back, John. It's about he's playing both. They want him to play both anyway. And the system is still the system. Are you the field number one or the weeks? Are you the play call side number one or the backside number one? You can be the backside number one as the Z, and you could be the front side number one as the Z, and the play call is going to still be the same. So it's about knowing the concepts, and there's technical things that are different from playing the Z compared to the X, but they want him to be able to do both. So I think this is a great opportunity for him to get some work there. He played mostly Z last year, but he'd get a little bit of boundary work last year as well. I think with Cam, the hope is that if he's the player they hope he can be, then they're going to move him around to both outside spots, not just put him in the boundary or not just leave him on the field. You want to have times where him and Micah Gilbert on the field together, and you want to have times where you're going with more of a fast lineup, and you may put Cam in the boundary with more shifty, speedier guys to the field. You can do both, and they want to be able to do both.
Yep. Goes back to the conversation that you and I had yesterday, just around they want to continue to diversify the receiver room, and Cam playing both boundary and field is huge. Is there anything, question from I Am Tenzin, is there anything you'd be looking for that's similar or different during the blue gold game?
Not really. It's kind of normal game. I just want to see what the young guys do. I want to see how physical the team is, how much energy they have, how do the quarterbacks look. That's pretty much the same thing. Now the focus may be on, okay, last year I'm like, okay, let me look who's going to be the other, who's going to be the middle linebacker, who's going to be this or who's going to be that, and like now we kind of know,
Yeah.
Okay. I don't need to worry about like last year's like who's going to start opposite Xavier Watts. Well, now it's who's going to start opposite Adon Schuler. So I want to see how those guys perform. But spring games, a lot of times for me, I want to see how the quarterbacks perform. I want to see how the young players perform. That's more of what I care about. Like if Leonard Moore goes out there in the blue gold game and gets beat a couple times, I'm not going to be like, uh-oh, is he not as good as – I'm like, hey, all right, young receiver. Like that's just kind of how I am. It's like,
yeah,
I already know he's pretty good. So if this guy's making plays on him, that's a good sign for me. But some people are like, I don't know. Leonard Moore's maybe believing the hype too much or whatever else because he gave up some, that's how some people are going to look at it. But for me, it's like, hey, great job, young buck, because I already know what he can do. Yeah. I don't really give a rip what Donovan Heinisch does in the spring game. Do you? Doesn't matter to me. He's already proven himself to me. Like, I know what he can do.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't really care what Jeremiah Love does in the spring game, where I would actually not even play him a snap in the spring game. I don't even know that I'd give Jadarian Price that many snaps in the spring game. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price ripped off a 60-yard run. Whoop-de freaking do. Like, so what? We already know they can do that. I want to see Keedron. I want to see Anias. I want to see Nolan James. That's what I care more about in the spring game.
The biggest difference for me from last year to this year is this is going to be the first and the only sample size that we get of what Chris Ash is going to be like in a game setting. That is something that I'm going to pay attention to, because last season it was like, all right, Al Golden year 3. We know what to see. It was just more of how the players are going to perform. It's going to be a very small sample size. Obviously, they're not going to roll out the red carpet and showcase everything that they're going to do on defense this season in the blue gold game, but it is going to be the first time Notre Dame's had a different defensive coordinator kind of overseeing day-to-day since the start of 2022. And so I am very interested to see what that's going to look like. Tommy Guns with another buy-sell hold. The new Superman looks woefully stupid.
Well, it depends on what version of Superman you think they're trying to create. Because if you're looking for a Superman that's sort of a recreation of the original Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, then you're probably going to think it's stupid. That's kind of what Man of Steel was trying to be. It was sort of a recreation of that original Christopher Reeve Superman. I actually rather liked Man of Steel, actually. This is not trying to recreate that. This is trying to recreate the Superman from the comic books, which was part of the DC universe. So that's why you see the dog. That's not a new creation that they just pulled out of nowhere. That's from the comic books. You've got the Green Lantern guy, one of the Green Lantern guys, which Nathan Fillion playing that guy with that weird haircut just kind of creeped me out a little bit. Like those are all, none of those are new characters. Those are all DC comic book characters. So basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to reignite the DC universe, which they have so woefully destroyed for the most part in the last 10, 15 years with this super dark, weird kind of just dark. I mean, there's no other way to say it other than just, it was really dark with like the Ben Affleck Batman versus Superman. It was just very dark. I mean, just not only dark storylines, but just the movie production was super, like literally dark. Like the end scene of Justice League, it's like it was kind of hard to watch it because it was like it was orange and black, and it was just really hard to see the scenes, and it was just kind of really weird. Now the fight scene when Superman comes in and then like just starts handling business against was a Steppenwolf, right? Like, okay, that was kind of awesome, but it took you 4 hours to get there. You know what I mean? It was like this resurrection of Superman. It was kind of lame, and I know that part's from the comic books, but like it was just they were trying to save something they had ruined. They did a terrible job. And my fear about this one, Trevor, is by throwing so many characters into the first version of this, I feel like you're running into the same problem you did with Justice League, which is you just do a bunch of characters with not a lot of story building into it. Whereas the thing that made Marvel so smart was, I mean, how many we saw Iron Man, we saw, let me pull up, what was the order?
They went Iron Man and then Iron Man 2, then Incredible Hulk, and then Thor, and then Captain America, and then the Avengers movie came out. And it was all very spread out.
Right.
Well, not very.
Right. So the Avengers was movie 7. And then Avengers Age of Ultron, between Avengers and Avengers of Age of Ultron, you had Thor Dark World, Iron Man 3, Captain America Winter Soldier, 2 of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Age of Ultron. Then you had Ant-Man, Civil War, Black Widow, Spider-Man Homecoming, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Thor Ragnarok, the next Ant-Man. Then you had Infinity War, and then Endgame, which were basically 2 movies, or 1 movie turned into 2. I mean, so you had a pretty decent amount of character building in those, at least of the prime characters. My concern about this Superman is that you're just throwing a bunch of characters that if you aren't someone who read the comic books, you're going to have a clue who these people are. And that's my concern, but they're doing anything possible to try to save DC. And I get it because Marvel's crumbling, and there's now that, like 10 years ago, Marvel was just a giant you had no chance of doing anything against. Now Marvel's had flop after flop, disappointment after disappointment. Like now's the time to get into that. So I have some hope and optimism for this, to be honest with you, but it's a very light hope and optimism, and it's more just about Superman is my favorite character. I mean, I've said this before. I was Superman for like 4 or 5 straight Halloweens when I was a kid. My mom said, I mean, she actually made me like a homemade Superman costume. Apparently, I would just wear it on a Tuesday. Fortunately, I was smart enough to know that I wasn't actually Superman, so I didn't like try to fly off the roof or anything like that. Fortunately, I wasn't that stupid, but I would just apparently wear it all the time. But I love the Superman movies, the original, especially. The second one was okay. After that, I've kind of blocked out the next couple that came out.
I don't blame you.
I don't blame you. And then some of the reboots were like lame, like the one with what's that guy's name? They had a couple guys that stepped in and tried to do it. I've never watched any of the Supermans on TV. I never watched was it Smallville? Is that what that's called? I never watched that. I just, I was in the original. But what's interesting is I don't do comic books, but I did watch the Justice League cartoon as a kid.
Yeah,
So
that
a
was
lot of
good.
these characters are like, okay, I remember that character. But if you're a comic book person, you're going to know a lot of these people. The problem is you're going to want a lot more people than just the comic book nerds to kind of like this. And I don't know that you're going to have enough character development for it to really shine. I'm hoping that it does. I really do. Because if you can do Superman right, you can really kind of start something. You know, I don't love the fact that Henry
Henry
Cavill,
Cavill.
right? I don't like the fact he's not Superman anymore, and this other new guy doesn't really look like Superman to me. Looks kind of skinny. I want Superman to be. I mean, Christopher Reeve was a big dude. You know, like Superman should look like he can kick some booty. And I don't know that this guy does, and that's my big red flag. On top of how will the character development be? Because like even in the preview, they're seeing a lot of different characters being part of this thing, man. Like, how are you going to fit all that into one movie? That's a concern I have.
No, I'm with you. I mean, there's so many people trying to recreate what Marvel did, and it's just people don't know it now because of how big it was. But what Marvel did with the MCU was crazy. Like Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. In terms of Marvel, those were all like B-list heroes. Like the up and coming heroes for Marvel were like the X-Men and Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. Like those were the big name guys. Like when the comics were coming out, people weren't like, "Oh, dude, Iron Man." Like that's why what they did was crazy. But what I think is going to be interesting about the DCU is based on the preview that we saw and what we know and who's going to be in the new Superman movie. I think they're going to mirror the comics more than what the MCU did. Like Kevin Feige and Marvel were like very open of saying like, hey, like we're not copy paste the comics. Like the things that happen in the comics, we're not going to recreate verbatim. I don't think the DCU will either, but I think they're going to stay a little bit more on track for that. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. I hope it turns out well because I love the DC.
I think Coach Bent said it best. He said the MCU is patient building their universe. And I agree. And that's like they lost their way for political reasons that we don't need to get into. But the other reason they lost their way is they weren't as patient with their post endgame attempts to make movies. Like they just try to jump into and even some of their later pre endgame, like the way they did Captain Marvel, I thought was lame. Like that didn't have the type of, I didn't think that one was as good as some of the other ones. And I don't even care about the political stuff. Like my parents are that way. If you don't agree with them politically, like they'll just stop. Well, I don't care. I don't care that Matt Damon doesn't agree with me politically. Cause freaking Jason Bourne's awesome. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to not watch Good Will Hunting because I don't agree with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and Robin Williams politically. I don't punish myself because I don't agree with their political views. Or if you don't like Sylvester Stallone's political views on the other side, you're not going to watch Rocky anymore. Like, come on, it's fake. I don't care about Matt Damon. I care about Jason Bourne. I don't care about what Robert Downey Jr. believes about anything. I care about Tony Stark and Iron Man. They're like, I just don't care. You know what I mean? It's more so about just the rushed nature in which some of those movies were put together. They didn't have the same sort of attention to detail. And some of the making like they didn't make Captain Marvel a very likable character. And her like with Iron Man, he started off very unlikable, but then you saw the transformation before your eyes where he was still the same sarcastic guy, but he had this awakening of what his purpose was. And he transitioned from unlikable at the beginning of the movie to a hero at the end of the movie. And we never saw that with some of the later movies. And then, of course, what they allowed that guy to do with the last couple Thor movies was
Taika Waititi.
Awful.
Yeah. Well, Marvel, I mean, COVID, last thing I'll say on this, but COVID completely ruined the MCU because it pushed everything back for them. And then Marvel flooded their own market. I mean, in 2021, in one calendar year, they put out Black Widow, Shang-Chi, The Eternals, No Way Home, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki Season 1, the first season, What If, and Hawkeye in 1 year.
Of
That's
all
crazy.
Those, I think the second one you said, I forget.
Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi. That was the only one. I thought Black Widow. It started off actually not bad. I liked Black Widow. I liked Shang-Chi. Then it kind of like I didn't like Loki. Hawkeye was okay. but some of the characters in there were super, like the tracksuit mafia guys were super lame. You know, it just was like, but it just like it's a good point. It was way too much too fast. Like I didn't, you know, No Way Home was good, but I kind of got over it after a while, especially since some of them were bad. And then there were some other reasons that they frustrated me, but yeah, I just, their original launch was very intentionally over a period of time.
Oh yeah.
And it was smart. And I don't know that DC has that kind of patience. And yeah, I think the other thing, Marvel was smart to pick some, like the first Marvel movie was Iron Man of the Marvel universe, correct?
Yep, 2008.
They picked a big name actor. He was not necessarily, his career had kind of been on a downside, but he was still a big name actor. I mean, who's the biggest name that I've seen in this new Superman one? It's Nathan Fillion. Like, I don't have a clue who this new Superman is. Not that I need to, but like, you kind of maybe miss a chance with more of a known commodity that's going to draw people. I mean, look, there's reality is Tom Cruise. We don't know if certain movies are going to be good or not, but if Tom Cruise is in it, it's going to have an automatic floor of what's going to, of a movie.
Sure.
And I feel like you kind of need one of those. And Robert Downey Jr. was kind of that type of guy. And I think a lot of people are like, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark? That's kind of his personality. You know what I mean? Like, that's why he fit that role so well. Cause you're like, how much of this is acting and how much of this is Robert Downey Jr. being Robert Downey Jr.? You know what I mean? So, but like DC, I mean, like the Green Lantern, that was such a great opportunity that they just kind of wasted. I think the Green Lantern the story could be really cool, but Ryan Reynolds wasn't the right actor for it. You know what I mean? Like, that's got to mesh well. Like, I'm not a big Chris Evans fan in most movies. I don't really like a lot of what Chris Evans has done in any other movie, but he was great as Captain America.
Yeah.
Just looked like Captain America should look. You know what I mean? And you gotta pick the right actor. Like what I see one time, a role that what was it that Russell Crowe turned down, a movie that ended up going to, what was it? I'm like, I just can't picture him in that movie. Was it Lord of the Rings? Wasn't he the one that originally they wanted to play Aragorn? And I'm like, no. Like Viggo, I'm pretty sure that was because I thought I heard him talking about that. And Viggo Mortensen got the role, and like he is like perfect Aragorn.
Yep.
That's big, very important. Like Hugh Jackman was not supposed to be was not the original Wolverine. He wasn't the first person they pursued for that role. And then you look at it and you're like, dude, I don't know that I could picture anybody else as Wolverine. Yeah.
Well, it's just like with The Office. I think Seth Rogen auditioned for like Dwight Schrute.
That'd have been terrible.
Yeah, terrible. It's completely different.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful. And that's why it was so bad after Steve Carell left. You needed that particular ensemble, and then you try to replace them with like Will Ferrell and James Spader, and then for a while, Kathy Bates. It's like, what? What are we doing here? What's Idris Elba doing in this series? Like, don't they already have a British version of this show? What are we doing? Idris Elba doing here? It got super lame. But the first 5, 6, 7 seasons were just excellent TV. Funny story. I refused to watch The Office. I thought it looked stupid, and my wife had to watch it for a class. Great, had to pay tens of thousands of dollars so she can go to school. And one of the assignments is you got to watch The Office. Boy, real tough work right there. Just kidding, babe. But she's watching it, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this stupid thing. So I'm in the other room doing work, and she just keeps laughing and laughing. And I was like, all right, well, if you're gonna freaking keep laughing like this and distract, I might as well watch it with you. Oh my gosh, I was like, what have I done to myself? What have I deprived myself of for all these years? I loved it. I was like, it's so great.
It's awesome.
But yeah.
Salty Virginia Peanuts. The Lady Irish exodus seems extraordinarily excessive in its numbers. How often does this happen in programs in the top echelon of women's basketball, or really any college sport?
Well, it's pretty prominent nowadays. and it's a little bit more than normal, but it's kind of prominent. I think the only thing that was surprising of all of this was Olivia Miles. Like, that's the only one that was surprising and different than normal, because normally the stars don't do this. I mean, you've seen some, but like Angel Reese, I don't know that I would consider her a star before she went to LSU, when she was still in Maryland. Haley Van Lith was, but you don't see Paige Becker's transferring. Juju doesn't transfer. I mean, you don't see that as much. But a lot of the others, you had one girl who's a freshman 5-star that didn't play a whole lot. You had another girl that was injured all year. I mean, some of those were Emma Risch has never been able to find her. None of those were like, if Olivia Miles was still coming back or in the WNBA draft, I don't know that we'd still have the same, oh my gosh, the sky is falling that we have now. But when Olivia started the thing, you're like, what? I thought she was going to the WNBA. She's not only coming back, but she's leaving go somewhere else. Like, this is wild. So yeah, this is good. I mean, like Michigan went out and got Trey Donaldson out of the portal last year, and shocker, he jumped right back into portal and within 2 days committed to Miami. Well, you hired a mercenary. Well, what'd you think he was going to do? He's going to just have this blind loyalty to your program? Like somebody did a thing where they showed like the top 16 teams in the Sweet 16, and they just put the logo of where they went to school. And it's like, other than like Duke and Michigan State and like a couple other teams, I have no clue who that team is. None. Unless you follow that team, like who they signed with out of high school is what it was. And like some of these schools, like Michigan was an example, all 5 of their starters were guys that started somewhere else. And it's just like, God, this is terrible. This is disgusting. That's why I don't watch college basketball. It's like, good luck. What's your team going to look like next year? No idea. We'll find out here in the next month, and the portal opens up. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's gross. Very, very gross.
Fair enough.
But it's not good, though. It is not good, Trev. Like,
no.
I don't know that Notre Dame's going to want to rebuild their entire roster with Hannah Hidalgo, KK Bransford, Cass Prosper, and then nothing but transfers. I don't know how that's going to go. Hopefully it goes well. But hopefully. I don't know. Really don't know.
Tommy Guns, Draft Day is currently available to watch on Netflix. I have not seen it yet. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do I need to watch this movie?
I'd say 10. Is it a 10 movie? Am I going to grade it as a 10? No, but it's like, you're a sports fan. It's an enjoyable movie. It's not going to win any Oscars. If you're someone who's like, it wasn't true to how the NFL draft process works. Well, dude, nobody's going to watch a movie that's true to how the NFL draft process works. It's freaking long and boring and lame, and nobody cares. It's an entertaining movie. It's it. Very unrealistic. Kind of a dumb plot line if you sit and think about it. But when you just sit down and watch the movie, you're like, this is an entertaining movie. I enjoyed it. So I'd say definitely watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. Why it's rare to come across football movies that are really good that don't feature like a lot of football being played. And that's what I appreciate about Draft Day. So, yeah.
Let's go down here to this one.
Patio Furniture, great name. If coaches plan to inform the third quarterback of their standing at the end of spring, is there thought or strategy beyond merely who is the third that goes into this selection?
Yeah, I think that it's more of, Patty, it's a great question. I think that is going to be more of who they're going to make number 2. And here's why I say that. I think you're going to want to make number 2 the guy that you think is least likely to transfer. Because if let's just say hypothetically that the guy that's actually number 2, he's not going to he's going to transfer if he's not number 1. But the guy that's number 3 may not transfer if he's number 2, but he will transfer as number 3. So you kind of got to be smart about that. Okay, we're going to make this guy number 2 because we don't want to lose both of them. So I think that's kind of the strategy that goes into it. I mean, it's kind of, you're kind of informing a guy he's third, but he may not necessarily be third. Unless it's like that's the order. The guy that's number 2 actually is the guy that's most likely to stay, and the guy that's number 3 is most likely going to leave. So that would be, that would be my thoughts on that. What do you think, Trev?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think this is one of the things that doesn't get talked about a whole lot with the quarterback competition ongoing. And I'm not talking about transfers not being talked about, but Marcus Freeman has shown in the past that there has to be some sort of level of transparency with his players for them to have the opportunity to go and pursue what they believe to be best for them. And I think that makes this quarterback competition an interesting dynamic with the people in the room, because we've said before, all 3 guys could go start at other Power 4 schools. This isn't a situation where, if one of them leaves, they'd be real great at Miami of Ohio. Like it's hey, they could go elsewhere in the Big Ten. They could go elsewhere in the SEC. Current state of the quarterback rooms in the SEC, they could probably go somewhere in the SEC and start. Drew Pine started a couple games in the SEC last season. And so I think that you're in a spot where you have to be able to communicate what's best for your team and what's best for the players that are on your current roster right now. So, but I'm with you, Brian. I do think that it's more of a conversation who that number 2 guy would be.
It's a good question. And that was fresh in my mind because I was just talking about this with a friend, with Vince yesterday. So Vince came over yesterday. We were trying to fix his computer. We were talking about sort of the future of IB and some different things. He's always my sounding board. And I made smash burgers. So we actually made them a little different this time. Normally I just make the burgers with cheese, lettuce, bacon, and caramelized onions, but I actually sauteed some mushrooms this time and put those on there too. It was freaking awesome.
There we go.
Yeah, it was really, really good. The only part, it kind of the sweetness of the caramelized onions and then the mushrooms kind of drowned out the bacon a little bit. So I might actually not make it with bacon next time because it kind of overwhelmed the bacon a little bit. Where normally the bacon and the caramelized onion it's like perfectly melts together to give you like that salty versus sweet flavor. But there was too much sweet I felt with this one, and it just kind of drowned out the bacon a little bit. But the bacon was crunchy, so it gave it a good crunch. But yeah. So we were talking about this conversation kind of came up last night. Like, should Notre Dame put thought into who they make 2 and 3 based on what gives you the best odds to keep at least one guy? Because ideally, you don't want 2 and 3 to leave.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting.
PJC 1122 was Jaylen Smith the most athletic high school linebacker you've ever seen? And have any Notre Dame linebackers been close to his level in high school since his recruitment?
Yeah, he was. And no, I don't know that I've seen any linebackers in high school, like true linebackers that were on his level athletically. I mean, I've seen some rover types that are like 205 that were close to him athletically, but nobody that was going to grow into a 6'2", 235-pound guy, no. At Notre Dame or anywhere else, he was a freak. He was a generational talent, in my opinion.
A unicorn, some might say.
Yes, very much so.
JC Bodie, do you think fans mistake Angeli's nerves of steel for experience?
No, I mean, look, he's got 10 career touchdown passes. He has started a game. He did come off the bench last year against Penn State. I mean, that's real experience. It's just not so much. Like, I think people make too much of how much experience he has. Like, he started half a year. He's got 1 career start. Like, he's less experienced than Pat Dillingham was. You know, like, I don't care about 1 start. I care about how much the volume experience. And 1 start in 1 drive, 1 start in a bowl game, and then 1 drive a year later against Penn State does not qualify this high-level experience that just blows away anything that anybody else could do. It just doesn't. Like, that's what was the weakest part of the Joe Burrow versus Steve Angeli comparison. Because like I said yesterday, I understand what Greg McElroy is trying to say. He wasn't saying that Steve Angeli is going to be the number 1 draft pick or throw for 60 touchdowns. He was talking about a guy that went from nobody was talking about him to everybody's talking about him. I think the weak part of that is like I was listening to the show that Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman did, and I rather enjoy their conversations usually. Ari Wasserman was one of the people that was like giving Notre Dame a lot of love coming into the playoffs last year. So, you know, I don't have to agree with everybody, but Ari Wasserman made a comment where he said, you know, we all we knew about Joe Burrow was like a season of being average. And I'm like, hold on a second. Joe Burrow was not average in 2018. He played in a lame offense, but like there's a reason that I looked at that offense and others looked at that offense and said, dude, if they open it up, this team's going to be really good. Because you could see Joe Burrow was a good football player. I didn't see if they get a real offense, he's going to pass for 5,600 yards and 60 touchdowns next year, and they're going to win the title. I didn't see that. But you could see a guy that was going to be pretty good the next year with that talent around him, but the offense was super lame and held him back. That was clear as day to see. This wasn't like he was some bum. But the point is, we watched Joe Burrow start an entire season in the SEC. Have over 3,000 yards of offense and over 20 touchdowns. Steve Angeli started one game in a bowl game against Oregon State and played a series against Penn State. It is unfair to him to try to put him then on a level of a rational Joe Burrow conversation as a breakout player because it's a far different level of experience. So I think they make too much of his experience. I don't think the nerves of steel is where that comes from. I honestly think it's just some of it's narrative building. Some people just want there to be a debate about the quarterbacks because it gets you clicks. So even though you may know this is what's really going to happen, let me pretend like this is worth discussing so that way I can get people to tune into the show more often or read more of my articles. That's, I think, part of it too. But the other part of it is I think some people genuinely overrate the experience he does have. And I just don't. Like, oh, look what great thing he did. It was nice. It was good. It was a good field goal drive. I've never seen a field goal drive get more hype in my life than the one against Penn State. So it's like we're taking an experience that he should be praised for and we're turning it into something that it's not. And then you force people that otherwise just want to praise him for the job he did to then pick apart that performance because you're making too much of it. You're forcing me now to say, okay, hold on a second. He got sacked twice, fumbled the ball. Like somebody on the board, I think, said, if Billy Shrout doesn't recover that fumble, what's our conversation about Steve Angeli right now? I'm like, it's very fair. I don't necessarily view that as Steve's fault. It was a high backside sack that he didn't see coming. But still, the point is that didn't happen to Riley Leonard during the game. It's like we're making too much of it, and you're forcing people to say, hold on a second. People that make the bowl game experience out to be some, Tom Brady-esque performance, you force people to say, hold on a second. Name me one play where he went to his second read. Because he's going to kind of need that against the other OSU. No, not that one, not the Cowboys. The other OSU. Yes, that one, the Buckeyes, that one. Right? He's going to have to go past his first read a couple times. And that's what I think frustrates is the experience gets overplayed. But I don't think it's the nerves of steel. If anything, it's because of how likable Steve is. I think could cause people to overrate his experience because he's an easy kid to root for, a very easy kid to root for. I think that's more so about it than necessarily the nerves of steel. Because if he had nerves of steel and he was kind of a prick, I don't think people would have the same feeling. But because he's just a good kid and everybody talks to him like he's a great guy, the locker room loves him. But if Steve Angeli had the same exact experience, but everything we heard in the locker room was players don't like him, he's this, he's that. Negative, people wouldn't be talking about his experience like they are. They'd say he's only started one game and it didn't mean a whole lot. And he only played one series last year that anything mean. Like, why are we over? If he was an unlikable kid, I think that's where it would come from. So I don't know if it's the nerves of steel. It's more about, I just think he's a really likable kid. And he's easy to root for that reason. I think that's more of where it comes from than anything else. Thoughts, Trev?
Yeah, I mean, look, man, with a player like Steve Angeli, I try to live as much in the gray as I possibly can. Like a lot of the debates that we talk here, there's a camp of people that take the extreme, and they're on either side. And I try to look at the facts of the matter and then evaluate my opinions on him from here. Yeah, and look, we've talked about Steve Angeli's tool belt in comparison to the other quarterbacks. I don't think that it's ludicrous to say that his experience, albeit limited, is a lot more significant than the two others because C.J. Carr didn't play a snap in 2024. He wasn't in college in 2023. And Kenny Minchey has 17 career snaps as a Notre Dame quarterback between 23 and 24. Steve Angeli has 238. Now, a good chunk of them came against the Oregon State bowl game. So it's just one of those, to your point, Brian, I don't want to dismiss it like it's nothing, but I also don't want to make it sound like he had to come in and start in the national championship game either. And so that's the gray area that I try to live in with Steve. I don't think that his experience in the limited time that we've seen him gives him this mile-long head start in this competition. But I'm also not in the camp of people that dismisses it like it's nothing, and he's only has experience going against scout team players. And so, like, to me, it's in between. So that's where I'm at with a guy like Steve. Tommy Guns. Stiers the Elder says recruiting for Notre Dame's women's basketball isn't an issue. How is it not an issue to only have a one-player class? I understand the portal, but can you honestly expect to get enough?
Yes, because look, we have to rethink how we look at recruiting. Because recruiting isn't just high school anymore. It is portal recruiting. And so now what I could say, Tommy, is you could disagree with the strategy, and that's totally fine. It's not so where I would kind of disagree with Sean is I'd say I think recruiting is an issue because I don't like the strategy. And then Sean would say, neither do I, but that's not the point. The point is they identified one player and they got her. They identified Kate Codwell. And it's not like they missed out on a whole lot of players in the class. I don't like the strategy. So you could say recruiting is an issue in that regard based on high school recruiting. But if they go out and get the players they want, then because like she doesn't need 8 players in the portal. She only plays an 8-person bench. So she really only needs 5. Now I'd say, that might not be enough because what if somebody gets hurt and you get into these issues and you've had a lot of years where you haven't had a deep enough bench because one person goes down and you're not. Now you say, well, now you may need 6 or 7. Well, a couple of those don't need to be studs. A couple of those can be an Anna DeWolf type of player, an Abby Prohaska type of player who's a good role player, bench player type of thing where, you can get one of those from Columbia or Cornell or Lehigh or Lafayette, something like that where they don't need 7 stars. They may only need 7 players, and part of that's if you do have Leah Macy healthy, then maybe it's only 5 or 6, but she's not going to be healthy. So, but the thing I'd say, Tom, is you are putting yourself in a bind where if you don't hit like the inside straight on the top players you want, you're not going to have a talented enough team to make a run. That's where it gets tough. And I don't believe in rebuilding through the portal every year at Notre Dame. And I think you're seeing that with Micah Shrewsbury. Yes, he has to live on the portal, but he's trying to build through high school. He signed 3 guys in last year's class, right? It was Sir Muhammad, Cole Serta, and Garrett Sundra, correct? That was the 3? Was it only those 3? And then this class has, 4 in it? Or is it 5?
Yeah, there's 4. It's Jalen Harrelson, Ryder Frost, Tommy Oneman, and Brady Kohler.
Right. So you've got those 4. So you've signed 7 guys in 2 years, and then you supplement them with portal pickups. Mm-hmm. I think that's how Notre Dame in all sports should be, just because of the challenges of there's certain players you may want that you have no shot at getting into school. And it's a little different for you than it is for TCU. So I don't like the strategy, but the reality is when Niall Ivey goes after players, she has a pretty high success rate of getting them. I just wish she'd put more emphasis on the high school level. But she may look at it as like, well, look, I go get these 5 stars. They come here, well, they may leave in a year. Well, then pick the right ones. UConn doesn't have a bunch of players leaving every year.
True.
Juju's, USC added transfers. They're not losing their top players to the portal. So I'd say there's some issues that need to be addressed in that regard. But I understand where Sean's coming from when he says recruiting is not the issue. He's more referring to the ability to land recruits isn't the issue. That's what he's referring to. I would be willing to bet you that Sean would agree with us that
like the strategy's not there.
The strategy's not great. And then this is the second part of his question.
Great players, while Notre Dame was unwilling to pay NIL for Miles and other players on the team due to what Hannah's being paid.
I don't think those two things have anything to do with each other. I think Hannah Hidalgo becomes a very easy scapegoat. Oh, they don't want to play with her. Notre Dame can afford to pay Olivia and Hannah. The question is, I don't think they wanted to pay Olivia more money. They've already done that every year. They've given her more money every year. And it's like, if we don't give you more money, you're going to go somewhere else. Like, is that really kind of the way we're going to do this thing here? So I think it's more about that. It's not, I don't think they're unwilling to pay Olivia Miles money, which is what people are saying, is why they're. I mean, you think that Kylie Watson's jumping in the portal because Notre Dame's not paying her enough money because they have to give it all to Hannah? No, if Notre Dame wanted to pay her enough money to keep her, they'd pay her enough money to keep her. She scored 6 points a game. She's not going to be hard to replace in the portal. I mean, for being honest, Kate Koval, I think eventually could be a really good player, but she didn't do a whole lot for you this year. She won't be hard to replace this year for what she provided this year. The hardest players that you're going to have to replace remain, with the exception of Olivia, the players who are going to the WNBA. It's going to be Sony. It's going to be Maddie Westbald. It's going to be Liza Carlin. It's going to be Leatu King. They're the ones that are going to be the hardest to replace, not the portal players you lost. Not a forward who scored 6 points a game and didn't play a minute all year. Not Kate Koval. Eventually could be harder. I mean, Emma Risch didn't play. So those players won't be hard to replace. It's going to be the ones that are going to the WNBA that are primarily good. Because, look, they went to the Sweet 16 the year before without Olivia. So they were the same team with Olivia that they were without Olivia.
Yeah, that's facts. Well, I think with a lot of other transfer portal players too, and I'm including all of Notre Dame sports in this, I still think it's funny that there, and Tommy, I'm not saying that you're saying this, there's just a general consensus of people out there that believe that when Notre Dame loses a player in the portal, they have like financial hardships and they are not able to pay these players. That like it's Notre Dame. We, on one side of the coin, as a fan base, can be like, we're Notre Dame, we're independent, we have so much money, it doesn't even matter. Look at our TV deal, look at our Under Armour deal, look at us, look at how much money we got in the national championship. And then also on that same light, be like, oh gosh, like are people going into the portal because we can't pay them enough? I view it as when Notre Dame loses a player to the portal, it is a business decision on both sides. Like it is, Notre Dame is just through evaluating their own team and through some self-scouting, they're just like, we just don't need to pay you that much money because we think that we can find a viable replacement, which does make the Olivia Miles situation interesting. But I look at it as the players that they are retaining, like across all sports, Notre Dame's ability to pay on NIL. You don't think other teams came after Jeremiah Love? You don't think other teams came after Leonard Moore? You don't think other teams came after Charles Jagasaw? You know, like it's just, look, Notre Dame has the ability to pay whatever and be very, very, very competitive in the NIL landscape. And I think that is shown more by who they retain than who they're losing. I mean, Marcus Burton's coming back to the team, and he is a player that you can make the argument he has like kind of not a lot of reason to come back. I mean, he's like.
By the way, that is freaking huge for the men's basketball program.
Marcus
Burton's coming back.
Oh, that's huge.
So huge. Because you're going to have a healthy Sir Muhammad next year. Cole Serta got some important experience. Braden Shrewsbury is going to come back next year, and with the role he's going to have. Kevin Jai is going to be back, right? He didn't go into Portland.
As of now. Yeah.
As of now. And then you add Jalen Harrelson. You add the two wings that Ryder Frost is a dude. Like, as a two, I mean, he's a good player. I like the big guy they got. You know, like he's a legitimate post guy that could help you as a freshman. The forward is probably going to need – he's like where Garrett Sundra was, like maybe can help you with 5-10 minutes late in the year, but he's going to need some time in the weight room and all that. Mm-hmm. But now Garrett Sundra goes into year 2. He might be able to help. And then you get, 2-3 good portal pickups and, now you're doing something because you don't need, like that's where I think Tay Davis made a big mistake, like basketball-wise. Money-wise, maybe he's going to get more money in the portal. But I'm like, dude, you were going to get a chance to be a really good complementary player next year to Marcus Burton, to Jalen Harrelson and those type of guys. Like, I think he'd have been a more effective player next year. But you just get a couple guys here now and through the portal, 2-3 guys in the portal. Now a Matt Alaka is going to be a lot more effective next year than he was this year, where you kind of you needed him to be your dude at times because Marcus went down. Mm-hmm. Now he could have been exactly what you need him to do, a volume scorer, shooter, sharpshooter off the bench. And now those kind of guys can be more impactful. You don't need them to be stars. You've got a McDonald's All-American coming in the wing. You've got a All-American at point guard. You just need complementary pieces. Sir Muhammad's now going to have a year under his belt. He's a good basketball player. Ryder Frost is a day one rotation, 2-3 type of player. Like your needs now in the portal are way different. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting. Like I'm like, how crazy is this? right now I'm more fired up to see what the men's team is going to be next year than the women's team. If you'd have told me that 2 weeks ago, I'd have been like, dude, you're out of your freaking mind. Because Marcus is probably going to leave. The team stunk. Like, I'm way more excited about the men's team right now than the women's team because of just what's kind of transpired this last week, really.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Question in here from Reese Briner. What road game are you looking forward to the most this season?
Probably Arkansas.
Yeah.
Just because when I talk about looking forward to, it's more about a place I've never been. I've been to Miami. I mean, we were just in Miami. I've seen a Notre Dame game in Miami. It's an NFL stadium and not a great one at that. It's just like, it's Miami Notre Dame's always cool to watch, but I don't care about the stadium. I've been to BC before. Nice little place. I've been to Pitt before. Again, NFL stadium. I've been to Stanford before. Much improved stadium when they did the rebuild a number of years ago. It's okay. I've never been to Arkansas, and that's going to be a pretty big crowd. I'm looking forward to it. I like going to places I've never been before, unless it's places like, I think Clemson's a really cool place to watch a game. I do. Now, that also depends on, like, you and I talked about this. You didn't enjoy your experience in Clemson. Was it for the 15 game?
No, I went in 2018 when they played.
2018?
No, I went in Louisville when they played, or I went into 2018 when they played Louisville.
So, didn't they won by like 70 or that game or something like that?
77-13.
Yeah, that was a butt whooping. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm Arkansas. Arkansas would be the one. Yeah. The other ones, I'm like, all right. Next would be probably Miami, just because it's probably going to be the best game, or potentially the best game of the one. So yeah, that'd be it.
I'll probably say whatever neutral site game they play in the semifinals.
I dig that, but that's not a road game though.
I mean, I count road games if you're not playing in Notre Dame Stadium. Yeah. If you're not playing at home,
you're a neutral site game. If we're going to be technical, I'm just messing with you.
Joseph Barrett, if you had to choose, who would you rather have, Will Fuller or Michael Floyd?
It depends on the year.
Yep.
2024, we've been asked this about last year, and it was Michael Floyd easily. Like, I don't even have to think about it for a second, because Riley Leonard's not a quarterback I want throwing to a guy whose primary weapon is bombs, because that's not Riley Leonard's strength. 2025, it's a much harder question to answer. And I'd go with Will Fuller. Now, I think Michael Floyd is a better football player than Will Fuller, but you've got Malachi Fields as that big boundary body. What you don't have, you've got a lot of good possession types, but what you don't have is that burner. And I think, like, that's the one thing that you and I talked about this, Trev. That's the one thing Steve Angeli does well, is throw the deep ball.
Yeah.
He throws the deep ball pretty well. Kenny throws a great deep ball. CJ throws a really good deep ball. This is much more of a year where you'd want a Will Fuller. So do I want to pair Will Fuller and Michael Floyd and Malachi Fields? Or do I want to pair Malachi Fields with Will Fuller? It's a win-win, but if you're talking about just uniqueness of skill set, Malachi can do some of the things Michael can do. Not as well. Malachi's not doing what Will Fuller can do. Nobody on the roster except for KK and Cam can do what Will can do, and they can't do it nearly as dynamically as what Will did it. So it's about building the ideal receiving core. In 2024, it's a no-brainer. That's Michael Floyd. In 2023, I'd have gone with Michael Floyd. In 2022, I probably would have gone with Michael Floyd. In 2021, with Jack Cohn, I might have gone with Will Fuller. So it just depends. It depends on what I'm looking for and who the quarterback is. And on this team, with the makeup of this team, I'd probably go Will Fuller. But at the end of the day, you're going to be – it's a win. The other thing, too, is I'll say this. Will Fuller never got – Michael Floyd, for much as I love him, he did have an injury history. He did miss games in 3 different seasons. So Will did not.
True. Siggy 13, college football 26 will be out sooner than you think. From your experiences on 25, what are 2 things you'd like to see added to CFB 26? I want formation subs in Dynasty and custom stadiums in Team Builder.
I thought you could do custom stadiums. Or you can't do that, or you have to pick one?
I am not sure. I only did the create a roster thing once. I don't like how you have to do it now. I'm an old school. I would do it all on the PS2, like in the game itself. And now, like if you want to build your own roster, you have to like go online and then like upload it, which I mean, it's fine. But I don't know if you can do stadiums. I don't remember.
I would, for me, it would be I want to be able to rename conferences. Like I want to be able to call a conference whatever I want. I want to be able to recreate the Big 8. I want to be able to recreate the Southwest Conference. I want to recreate the different leagues, and I want to change the American to the Big East. Stuff like that is what I'd like. That's a big one for me. I'd really like to be able to do that. And I have had a hard time like figuring out how to do audibles where it just automatically is there. So that's a thing that I've had a tough time with. So maybe it's not an issue with that, and it's just I need to learn how to do it. But I haven't played it a ton. But that'd be one, and then because I do Dynasty, yeah, I think I'd like to see them give more points, a little easier to get points to be able to build your coach. That'd be a little bit easier.
Yeah,
that was a little bit easier. It's like it takes a while to like get enough points to kind of get anywhere. So that would be a couple for me.
I'm a big cosmetic guy when it comes to the game. Like I play Dynasty, I play all that stuff, but I'm very much like I want the players to like look like how they actually look like the gear that they wear on game day. I want it to all be legit. Biggest gripe for me, for whatever reason, they gave like Jadarian Price like very long dreads in this game.
They made Micah Gilbert a quarterback also, like with his apparel. Like you got he's got quarterback like the wristband and all that. Pretty lame, yeah. Jadarian Price also looked right like Keidron Young.
Yeah.
Like his body type, the dreads, the big, thicker body. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm big with the cosmetics of the game. That's probably my biggest one. And then in the Road to Glory mode, I thought it was cool that like back in the day, like you started out as like a high school recruit and you had to play like in the state championship. Like that, I thought that was cool. You kind of see the journey. But now in Road to Glory, you just start out and you're like, all right, do you want to be like a blue chip recruit? If you do, here's the schools that offered you. And then you just go. So I thought that was kind of meh.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Isaiah Lehman, build your all-time Notre Dame quarterback using traits from any of them. Traits are size, athleticism, arm, legs, decision-making, and leadership.
Size, Brady Quinn. Athleticism, Tony Rice. Arm, strength, Malik. Legs, probably Riley Leonard, because I think he's a little bit more elusive, mobile when moving around. Decision making, Jimmy Clausen. Leadership, Brady Quinn. That'd be mine. What's
size? Yeah, gosh. Size.
It's hard to go against 6'4", 235. It's hard to go against. It looks like a Greek god. It's hard to go against that one.
Size, I'm torn between 3 guys. I'll probably go with Quinn, but the 3 guys in consideration for me are Quinn, Kaiser, and honestly Riley Leonard. Riley was 6'4". But yeah, size, I'll go Quinn. Athleticism from guys that I've seen. Everett's probably up there in that conversation for me.
Brandon.
Riley Leonard. Yeah, Brandon Wimbush is in that conversation for me. Yeah, athleticism, I would say Everett. Arm strength, I'd go Malik. Accuracy, I know that's not one that you stated, but I'd go Clausen.
I mean, that would be one of the easiest ones to pick.
Yep.
Clausen. That may change in a couple of years, Trev. That might change in a couple of years.
Yep. Decision making, 2009, Jimmy Clausen. Leadership, one of Brady Quinn or Riley Leonard.
If you were my age, that would be a much easier thing for you to pick for Brady. Like, but I can understand why you wouldn't pick Brady, which is kind of wild to think about. You were what, 7? How old were you when he was born? When he was played?
I was like 8, 9.
Okay. Yeah. I get that.
As the college game continues to resemble the NFL model, do you think electing a commissioner would be a better governing solution?
I don't think that the college game resembles college football. I mean, NFL. Like, none of this was the only thing that resembles the NFL is they're making money now. That's it. What else about this resembles the NFL? The NFL has very clear tampering rules that you get crushed for if you do. The NFL has contracts where if a player's in contract, he has to kind of live up to that contract to a certain degree. The NFL has a very different player acquisition model. The only thing that resembles the NFL at all is and also too, when you look at it, all of these schools are essentially their own entities, where in the NFL, they're their own entities within a much more, tightly aligned. You can't just leave the AFC to go to the NFC just because you feel like it. I mean, it's just, you've had people go, the Seahawks, for example, but to me, it's a very different model. And I don't think a commissioner makes a whole lot of sense in that regard. I think maybe like a board. I think a commissioner for me is dangerous because commissioners have a lot of power and they can not be held as accountable as easily. I think it's also a very different. I mean, you're talking about, there's 20 some NHL teams. There's 30 Major League Baseball teams. There's 32 NFL teams. There's 30 NBA teams. You're now talking about 130 something teams, or even if you just want to go Power 5, 65 to 70 teams, like one guy should not be commissioner of that. I think what you need to have is probably best thing to kind of do would be more of a board. You need to have people that represent the different leagues. We're kind of talking about the Justice League earlier. I mean, it's almost kind of like that. I mean, you've got your representative for the Green Lanterns. You need the board needs to be made of these different leagues. And I think you kind of need to maybe have someone who is, there need to be some sort of commissioner model, but not the way that it is in professional sports, where that guy is like the boss, where he kind of is it almost kind of like how the playoff committee has someone that's sort of like maybe like the tiebreaker, and it rotates every now and then. And, it's just, it's a very imperfect system because of the nature of the size, the nature, all the different things that go into college sports. But the big thing is, whatever model you have, you're going to have to find a way to collectively bargain with players. So that way you can change the portal. You're going to have a hard time legally being able to change some of the things the courts have allowed without collective bargaining, because then you're going to get certain protections from Congress if you're able to do that. But then how do you get the players? How do you get a true representative for the players? I'm nervous about being able to give college players the collective bargaining power that you give to professionals, because I don't think you want to be bringing in the potential for opting out and striking and all those type of things, because the reality is college athletics is far more tied into the health of a university than maybe it should. And if an NFL team strikes, it just impacts the NFL team, where that's not the case in college athletics. It's in NFL, it's just about the NFL. And here it's collective bargaining for kind of all student athletes. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And I don't think one person in charge is going to, we've seen this with the NCAA. Name me a time where you've had an NCAA commissioner like, well, that guy's pretty good and has say on what's happening. No, it doesn't happen at all. Doesn't happen at all.
Fair enough.
Trev, do you have any thoughts on this? Salty asks, where are we in the Under Armour cleats are great, Under Armour cleats and injure players debate?
So I'll say this. Yeah, because I saw this question come in. I don't think the brand has anything to do with how players get injured. I don't. Now, with that being said, I did actually see, and this is interesting, and I'll have to do a little bit more research on these, but there's a new brand of cleats called Caddix cleats, Kaddix cleats. And it's interesting because the mold on the bottom, the studs in the bottom actually move a little bit. Like they don't just fully rotate, but it's to kind of help with the give of like the non-contact ACL injuries, which I thought that was kind of interesting. There's not a lot of teams that use them right now. They come in men's and women's sizes. They have like low cut and mid cut cleats. So potentially that's as like something like that could help. Like maybe some of these bigger brands start adopting that newer kind of technology. But with that being said, Salty, I don't think that it's the brand specifically, because Notre Dame's not the only team last year that suffered ACL injuries, nor are they the only brand that wear Under Armour cleats. You know, Alabama had ACL tears. They're represented by Nike. Michigan had some injury issues as well. They're represented by the Jordan brand. And so I just don't think that it's brand specific.
I also feel like, Trev, like, do you really think the NFL is going to sign with Under Armour for cleats if there was any kind of research that suggested that increased the
facts.
injury likelihood? I got to think the NFL did a lot of research into this before they signed with Under Armour.
Yep.
I think there's a greater likelihood that there's an issue with the field than the cleats if that were the case at respective places. But again, I don't know. I've never bought that very much. Last few, Trev, we're not going to be able to get to all the questions today. I want to get to some of the ones we haven't walked. Some of the people, there's a couple that'll be a second question they've asked, but I want to do a few more here before we get out of here.
Okay. Question in here from Pasquale. Thought Notre Dame was in a strong position with Simeon Codwell. Anything Notre Dame should have done differently, or did Ohio State just always have the advantage?
I don't think they always. Again, with the question yesterday, it's like we create these scenarios where it's like it's either this or this, and it's like it's neither of those things. Like, well, he signed here, so Notre Dame must have never had a real chance. Well, yeah, they did. Sometimes a guy signs there, you had a real chance that just got beat him. It's not here. Well, they actually always had the advantage. Well, at times Notre Dame had the advantage, and Ohio State won the day. One of the DB coaches, the D-backs coach at Ohio State, is related to him, and they're promising him a shot to play safety. Notre Dame told him, you're going to be a linebacker. You can't play safety at Notre Dame. He'll be a linebacker at Ohio State too. They're just going to tell him this to get him there. And they did a really good job recruiting him. It happens. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's just happens. They did a good job with that one. Notre Dame's done a really good job with some other ones. So, yeah. It's like I don't think Ohio State did anything wrong to lose Kingston Viliama-Asa to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame just did a better job. They both did a great job recruiting that kid. Notre Dame just did a better one, and the fit just felt better for him. Sometimes that happens. Where it's like, hey, you both did a great job recruiting that kid, but this school just did better than the other one. Or there was not even – sometimes, like, I had a time where I recruited a kid, and the kid calls me, and he's literally crying on the phone with me. Big old fullback too, man, like a real good football player, crying on the phone with me because he wants to play for me, but he just got accepted into Johns Hopkins. And so it's like, dude, I get it. It's Johns Hopkins. Go play for them. You know what I mean? Like, I did a better job recruiting than the Johns Hopkins coach did, but I couldn't compete with Johns Hopkins. Muhlenberg's a very good college, but I can't compete with Johns Hopkins, especially for the things he was looking to study. Just the fit's better sometimes too.
Yeah.
So it's not always as black as white as sometimes we make it out to be.
Super chat from God's Thumbs. Thank you for the super chat. Do you know of any spring games on this weekend?
I don't, Trev. I could look at like the YouTube TV for tomorrow, but I haven't looked, to be honest with you. And I don't need to look because the way that I have my YouTube TV set up is it just records all college football games. So I don't have to worry about going through and picking any, but I'm going there now and seeing if there's anything on there. And there's some lacrosse games. Open practices. I don't see any spring games so far. Doesn't look like there's any spring games on. At least they're not listed on YouTube TV. There's a pillow fight championship. Are we serious? We are not a serious country. The other day, Clemson's is what channel?
I'm not sure. I just looked on ESPN right now, and it just says their spring game and camp ends April 5th.
Where's the spring game? I wonder if they're playing it live, because I don't see anything on ESPN for Saturday for them. And they may play it later.
Apparently, West Virginia is also in the same boat where their spring
on
game
what
and camp
channel?
ends up. I'm reading this off of an ESPN article.
Gotcha. But it doesn't say what channel the games are being televised.
No.
Okay, because I don't see them on the schedule looking at YouTube TV, so don't know. Can't help you. I know that there's going to be a game on Peacock on the 12th. I know that. That's the only spring game that I know for a fact is going to be on there. So sorry I couldn't help you on that one.
I don't think it's being televised. I just look, Clemson, the only option that it gives you is for listening. And you can listen on the Clemson Athletic Network or the Clemson Tigers app.
Way to do right by your fans, Clemson. Good job. Good job.
Man. New York Giants Mets, I'm assuming is what that stands for. Anias Williams, does he have the potential to be a Christian McCaffrey player if our backfield wasn't so loaded?
No. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was a generational player. No. He could be a Christian McCaffrey type in that he's a legitimate threat as a runner, receiver, and returner. Certainly. He could be a really good all-around player, but so it's kind of like when I compared CJ Carr to Joe Burrow. I wasn't saying he was going to go throw for 5,600 yards and 60 touchdowns, but just like style of play, traits, things like that. It's like, okay, it's comparable to hit that player. Then I could say, sure, if that's what you're referring to, like he could be a Christian McCaffrey type in that he's a really impact runner. He's an impact pass catcher to a degree. He can return kicks for you. Sure. Is his impact going to be to the level that Christian McCaffrey's was, even if he was the dude? No, he wouldn't be that. He'd be a better version of Kyron Williams, is what I think Anias Williams' upside is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And let's see here. Here's one that I saw earlier that I thought was interesting.
According to Frank Stems, this is a question in here from Joseph Barrett. According to Frank Stems, Wes Pritchett, and Mike Stonebreaker on the Three Amigos podcast, they maintain that Michigan was the toughest game for the 1988 national championship season.
I could understand why an outside linebacker, an inside linebacker, and an inside linebacker would think that Michigan was the toughest game. Because that Michigan team back in the 80s was physical. Todd Light would probably tell you, Pat Terrell would probably tell you that Miami was a tougher game because they had to chase around those receivers all day. So I think it's just perspective. Andy Heck would probably tell you that the Michigan game was tougher because, again, style of play. So it's because those guys all three play the same position, by the way. And if you haven't ever listened to their podcast, listen to it. It's pretty cool. I mean, they're older guys, but like they share stories and there's some fun stuff in there. I've listened to it a couple times, but I would be shocked if they didn't pick Michigan. I mean, I've talked to you about that game, Trev. That was a 19-17 game, and Notre Dame's only touchdown that game was a Ricky Waters punt return for a touchdown and then a bunch of Reggie Ho field goals. That was a physical football game. And Michigan and Notre Dame played in a bunch of games like that back in the 80s and 90s. Bunch of games like that. But I have a feeling Todd Light and Pat Terrell and Stance Magala might have a different take on which game was tougher because of what they were asked to do. Yeah, you try chasing around these Miami receivers all game and see what you think of that. You know what I mean? Like, so sure. I could see that. I mean, I said this the other day. We were talking about who the top 5 teams were in 88. We were having that conversation about the conferences and independents. And I said 4 of the top 5 teams that year were all independents. Now, interestingly, Notre Dame beat 3 of them, and Notre Dame was one of them. So there's only one of the top 5 teams that wasn't themselves that Notre Dame didn't play and beat that year, which is astonishing. But the only non-independent, because it was Notre Dame 1, Miami 2, I think Florida State 3, West Virginia 5, and then number 4 was Michigan. because Michigan started the season off with a loss to Notre Dame by 2. Then they lost to Miami by a point the next week, and then didn't lose another game the rest of the year. And I think they did have a tie that year, though. But they finished 4th. That was a really good Michigan team. It's just, they played Notre Dame and Miami to start the season and lost by combined 3 points, who happened to be the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country at the end of the year, and they lost to them by a combined 3 points. So, yeah, I could understand why those Michigan teams would be considered really tough for a bunch of linebackers. And Stams was like, he was an outside linebacker, but it was like in that 5'2" era type of thing. So he was kind of like a, more of an outside and defensive end than he was he was more of a Viper than he was like a 3-4 drop end type of guy back then.
Sure.
So, yeah. Have you heard anything about this, Trevor?
Yes, I have. Yeah, they put out a video, and Coastal Carolina is going to be offering free concessions. The video that they put out was, I think it was like one of their managers walked up to the concession stand, ordered a hot dog. He's like, "What's the damage?" And the guy working the concession stand was like, "Nothing." So I think it'd be a good idea for Notre Dame. I mean, it'd be cool from a fan concept, but Coastal Carolina has a lot of a harder time filling their stadium than what Notre Dame does. So I think it'd be a good idea for the fans, but if you look at it from a university standpoint, like they would just be losing money. Notre Dame isn't not filling seats because hot dogs aren't free. That's how I look at it.
I think it could help to a degree, but it's not a big needle mover. Yeah.
Plus, it's a good bet that the university would just want to recoup lost costs from concessions in other ways. So either tickets would get more expensive or parking would get more expensive. So, I mean, at least you get a free hot dog, but parking is going to be $75 more. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's like, hey, Trev, you're getting a pay raise. Awesome, man. That's great. Yeah, but okay, FYI, you're now going to have twice as much work to do. You know what I mean? It's like, okay.
I worked a job before that. I was like, hey, we're going to give you like a $2 an hour raise. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, but we aren't going to reimburse you for like fuel. And the job was a driving job.
Yeah.
And I was like,
were they previously reimbursing you for fuel?
Mm-hmm. Like weekly, like you just logged the amount of miles and
yeah.
But then they were like, yeah, thank you for giving me $60 more a day to reimburse me for like hundreds of dollars in gas.
Right. Exactly. Clowns. Here's a couple good ones from John A1.
Now that the offenses have spread out on a more consistent basis, are defensive fronts now more predominantly front sixes instead of front sevens?
Sort of. Yeah. Generally, yes, but you'll still see a lot of front seven. Like Georgia still plays a lot of front seven. A lot of teams will choose to kind of tuck, kind of play that guy sort of. He's not a traditional Sam, but he's not a traditional rover either. He'll kind of play in between, and they'll bring their safety down, play a lot more cover one. They'll roll to some 2 and still drop that guy like they would back in the day with the Sam linebacker. Georgia still played a lot of 3 linebackers last year. They played a lot of front seven type of, like 7, D lineman linebacker types. Notre Dame honestly did that up until this year. I mean, they still played their rover a bunch in 2023 with Jack Kaiser. So they were still a front 7 with Jack Kaiser. So it just depends on the team and then the league. You'll still, I think it's more so becoming front 6s, but it's still more balanced than you'd think. I think in 2-3 years, unless there's some evolutions on offense, we start seeing teams do more 2 tights and running the football and more of a power set. You're going to see even more and more teams go to more of a, like Notre Dame has done a lot of 4-3 personnel, 4-2-5, 4-2-5 looks. You're now seeing Notre Dame last year almost exclusively was a 4-2-5 team, with the exception of when they would play the triple option teams. So, yeah, you're seeing more and more of it. More and more of it.
Which in the case of Army last year.
Yeah. 4-4. I mean, they were 4-4.
4-4.
Yeah. It's like you haven't seen that. I haven't seen that in a long time. And that was like at the D3 level. It's been a minute since I've seen a 4-4 in a non-goal line situation.
Salty Virginia Peanuts. Which is the better old school football movie? The Longest Yard, the original version, or the North Dallas 40?
I was going to say the Burt Reynolds version, but he was in both of them. So he just wasn't the main guy. Longest Yard. I wasn't a big fan of North Dallas 40, to be honest with you. It was okay. I wasn't a huge fan. So I'll go longest yard.
By default, I'm going longest yard. I have not seen the North Dallas 40. So
fair. I don't think you're missing out on anything.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
John A1, if Golden shows up and he's too good not to play, but Smith is the best nickel, where does he play?
Well, I think Dallas Golden is going to start off outside and then work inside also. A lot of that has to do with getting Devontae Smith. But I think this is the thing, John, I said I love about Dallas Golden. Dallas Golden, I've said, is a 4-star player, starting caliber, impact player at all 5 secondary positions. He can play boundary corner, he can play field corner, he can play nickel, he can play both safety spots. You just got to pick one and let him play there. That's really the big thing. So, yeah, I think he can play anywhere. So I think to answer the question, it's where does he have the best shot to crack the 2 deep as a freshman? That could be nickel. You could say, listen, Devontae Smith is not going to play every snap at nickel. We want to rotate him just like we want to rotate every other position. And Dallas is a guy that is our nickel of the future. So we're going to play him this year as the number 2 behind Devontae. He can play some outside in certain looks, but then I'm also like, for me, if you think Dallas Golden is your future nickel, that's what you decide. Play him a nickel, let him rotate in with Devontae Smith, and I'd make him my primary punt returner. That's what I'm going to do. I'm giving him a shot to become my primary punt returner. And then after Devontae is done, then Dallas steps in and he's ready to take over that role next year. And now you don't have to worry about recruiting a portal nickel next year. That's what I would do if you think that's his best position. But if it's one of those things where like he has a shot to start at outside corner, then you move him to outside corner and let him play there. Yeah.
Yeah. Not much of a difference in opinion from my side. I'll say this. Notre Dame is going to, if they continue to recruit at a high level, this is just kind of become the new normal. Like there are years past where a Dallas Golden shows up on campus and he's fighting for a starting spot day one. There's years in the past where Jadon Blair shows up on campus and he's fighting for a starting spot day one. And I think there's a lot of players that are currently there and will be coming in for years to come that we're going to talk about what if they're just too good to not play. It's like they'll find them a spot somewhere, but the higher you keep elevating your recruiting game, reality is you can only start 11 players on defense. And it's a really good problem for Notre Dame to have to keep building like this. But John, I completely get the question for sure.
Okay, we answered that one. There was one other one down here that I definitely liked. There we go.
Isaiah Lehman, what would Notre Dame's starting offense and defense look like with a team where the players with the most potential play?
Quarterback CJ Carr, running back Jeremiah Love, wide receiver room would be Malachi Fields, Jaden Greathouse, Cam Williams, Eli Rarian at the tight end. Starting offensive line would be some sort of combination of Charles Jagasaw, Will Black. So let's go Will Black and Gerby at tackle. Let's go Jagasaw, Shrouth at guard, and Anthony Knapp at center if we're going upside. Defensive line would be Boubacar and Bryce Young at end. If we're talking upside, it'd be Armo Mukum and Jason Onye at D tackle. Linebacker would be Drake Bowen, Kingston Viliama-Asa. Nickel would be Dallas Golden. Corners would be Leonard Moore and Christian Gray. And safeties would be Jadon Blair and Bronte Johnson. If we're talking like the most potential. Bronte Johnson's not going to be a better player than a Don Schuler this year. But it's just if it's about potential, that would be my starting lineup.
The only one that I would switch out would be James Flanagan for Eli Rarian, I think.
Interesting. Okay. It's close. I think Eli, when healthy, was a dude, but that's fair. What's encouraging, Trevor, is there weren't a ton of spots where we weren't going to talk about the guy that's already starting.
Yeah.
Which is last year, there'd have been a lot more potential guys that didn't play a lot that would have been in positions than this year.
Oh, yeah.
This year, those guys are starting to step into those roles.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then here's this one.
JC Bodie, what is your thoughts on the NCAA letting teams have a 4-team jamboree game 2 weeks before week 1?
You got a thought on that, Trev?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I think he's suggesting it. What would you think of the NCAA doing that? Because like they do that in Florida. I don't think he's saying that's what they're going to do. I think it's more of a what would you think of that type of thing? Sorry.
I think I don't know, man. I would need to see what they would be doing at this 4-team jamboree. Like, are they going to scrimmage the 3 other teams? Are they going to just run drills? I mean, you could make the argument that the risk kind of outweighs the reward. I mean, 2 weeks before week 1, I mean, you're talking about they do this 4-team jamboree, and then the next week is opponent prep. Like, I don't know. Maybe if they did it like in the middle of the summer, or like right before fall camp, but I don't know. Initially, like gut feeling, without knowing anything about this 4-team jamboree or what it would entail, I'd be against it.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, last one, Trevor. This is an interesting one from Tommy. Get to that one.
Tommy Guns, Paul Johnson to his triple option to Georgia Tech with him. Did Ken Niumatalolo run the triple option prior to coaching Navy? Can't be very many triple option coaches out there in the wild.
Well, when Ken Niumatalolo was coming up in the coaching ranks, there was a lot of triple option teams. And what's interesting is with him, however, to answer your question, is he had very little non-option experience. So Ken Niumatalolo played quarterback at Hawaii from 1986 to 1989. And I believe you will know who his offensive coordinator was. So the offensive coordinator at Hawaii from 1987 to 1994 was Paul Johnson. They were an option team back then. And then he coached then as a GA at Hawaii from 1990 to 1994 with Paul Johnson. And then left with Paul Johnson, Paul Johnson left to become the Navy OC in 1995, and then Ken Niumatalolo went with him. Coached there 97, 98. They were an option team. Paul Johnson left after 96 to go to Georgia Southern as the head coach, and then Ken Niumatalolo stayed at Navy, and then he spent 3 years at UNLV. And I don't believe UNLV was an option team back then. I'd have to go back and look, but I don't believe they were an option team back then. But I'm going to look that up and just to be sure. But then after 3 years there, it was John Robinson. Oh, here's wild. 2000, the offensive coordinator at UNLV in 2000 was Del Alexander. It's hilarious. Oh. So no, they were not an option team back then. And then Ken Niumatalolo came back to Navy in 2002, and obviously they were still an option team. So, and then he stayed there until he became the head coach because Paul Johnson returned to Navy in 2002, and he brought Ken Niumatalolo back with him. And Ken Niumatalolo was the assistant head coach and offensive line coach for 6 years. And then in 2007, when Paul Johnson left to go to Georgia Tech, Niumatalolo stayed as the head coach. So all his playing experience and all but 3 seasons of his coaching experience from 1990 to 2022 was all option, except for 3 years at UNLV, right in the middle. So, yeah, he had a very long history of coaching the triple option. But I think he kind of showed this year that he's a coach that can win without the triple option because they didn't run the triple option or anything like it at UNLV this year. I mean, at San Jose State this year. So, yeah, that's it. Good deal. Trev, my man, that's going to do it. It's going to do it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, great.
Real quick, somebody down here said that Trev seems like Ken Niumatalolo seems like a good guy. There's not a coach that I've done a more 180 on than Ken Niumatalolo. I despised him when he first took over at Navy. He talked so much trash and like taunted from the sidelines. But then like the longer he coached, he got away from like, I think he still had like former player vibes. And he became the much more like, I don't say polished, but just he grew on me. less of the antics became less, and you started to get to hear more of the stories about how much he cared about developing young people and the mentor he was and all that. And you're like, dude, okay, so he talks a little trash, but like he's in it for the right reasons. And I came to really respect him a ton by the end. But like I disliked him a ton when he first became head coach. But kind of really started to like him quite a bit by the end of his career. Quite a bit.
Well, good deal. Shout out to Ken.
Yeah.
Now, Brian and I, will Vince be on the post-practice show with us tomorrow?
Mm-hmm. It'll be me, you, and Vince.
Sweet. So me, Brian, and Vince will be back tomorrow after the post-practice show sometime in the afternoon. So it is going to be very important that you have that notification bell hit and keep your eyes out in the Twitter sphere or X sphere, whatever it's called now.
Probably close to 4 because we'll need to do some practice reports and all that stuff. So it'll probably be close to 4, but that's why you need to be notifications bell on and make sure you follow us on Twitter or you're on the message board and all that, Trev, because that's where you'll definitely know the time, but I think it's going to be around 4 o'clock.
Well, good deal. We will be back tomorrow. Really great submissions today, guys. Before you head out of here, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, whether it's Spotify podcast or Apple podcast, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But, of course, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Until tomorrow, that is Brian. I'm Trevor. We will be back here with Vince tomorrow for the post-practice report. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.